Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto goes back in time to save his parents. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Comfortably tucked in his bed with warm blanket and soft pillow, the blonde 4-year-old looked up to his father with bright blue eyes filled with expectations. Can you tell me again, Too-chan? What story do you want me to tell this night? Well, the child hesitated. Can you tell me about that night again? Again? The man smiled. But don't worry, Naruto-chan. I'll tell you, Namikaze. Minato chuckled. Ah-chan doesn't like that story. No, she does, Minato mused. But I am sure she told you that she is very happy that that night turned out good. Naruto nodded with fervor. But she always gets teary. She tries to hide it, but I feel Ka-chan is sad. Feel? Ah, it was to be expected that the two of them would have a strange bond. After all, this is a unique situation. Never before has a Jinchuriki survived the extraction of a Biju. Minato looked thoughtfully at his son. The night you were born, it was very chilly. And wasn't the evil masked man cold? You shouldn't, but he hurt Ka-chan. Naruto, Minato gently put a hand on his son's head. Calm down. You know that the masked man lost that night. He cannot hurt you or Ka-san ever again. The mysterious man. Naruto nodded eagerly. Can I ever meet the mysterious man? He said that he would return to Konoha in due time. Minato repeated the thing he had often told his son. I really want to meet him, Naruto yawned. He saved Ka-chan and even helped Too-chan to stop the evil man and his monster. Who told you about a monster? An older boy at the park said his father died when a monster attacked the village. Naruto blinked. He said it was the same night as. Don't worry about it, son. Minato bent over and gave his son a kiss on his forehead. No more masked man, no monsters. You are going to sleep. You don't want to miss tomorrow, do you? No. Ka-chan is going to take me to the park. And then we're going to eat ramen. You too and your ramen. Minato shook his head and he ruffled his son's hair before switching off the lights. Sleep well, Tyke. Love you, Too-chan. Love you too. The woman scraping her throat startled Namikaze Minato when he closed the door to his son's bedroom. Even a man like him, feared across the nations and practically worshipped as a god in Konoha, still froze when his wife made a sound like that. Of all the people he knew, only Namikaze Kushina, before they were wedded Uzumaki Kushina, could frighten Minato in this way. And again, he had always loved her for her ferocity. But ever since their son was born, he knew that there are also moments when he could be on the receiving end. Perhaps she's a bit overprotective. The masked man. Again. Kushina tapped her right foot on the floor, a warning signal for Minato that her patience was running thin. I thought we agreed on not telling Naruto anything more about the night he was born. Minato cringed, but still had the courage to keep smiling. Seriously, how did his wife do that floaty thing with her hair? After all these years, Minato still hadn't figured that one out. He was the one who asked. And you agreed that we had to tell him parts of the story, if only to prepare him. He hushed his wife and nodded to the door. This was not the kind of thing to talk about right outside Naruto's bedroom. So they went back downstairs and continued their discussion in the living room. Why? Kushina simply asked. He just told me that he could feel your sadness when we talked about the incident. Feel? Kushina blinked. How do you? You remember his hypothesis? Minato brought up the words of their savior. He talked about some kind of weird connection. But we don't know if. Kushina, in all of history there is not a single example of any Jinchuriki surviving the extraction of a Biju. Until now, we just assumed that extraction would mean certain death. The seal would be ruptured and the vast quantity of chakra that would be forced through it would completely destroy your chakra pathways. It still did, Kushina sighed. Being unable to assist her husband as a kunoichi was something she loathed. But still, he managed to stop the decay. You know why he made it impossible for you to ever manipulate chakra. I will die if I perform a jutsu, she grimaced. But you lived. Our son kept his mother because of what he did. I kept you. I mean what I said back then, I still do. I wouldn't have known what to do without you, pulled her close and comforted her with a hug. I'd be lost without you. I'd rather have lived on like a kunoichi than as some half-crippled weakling. I hate being a burr. Minato halted her by putting a finger on her lips. Don't you ever say that again. Don't you dare calling yourself a burden. I made my vows the day we married. I will always support you, just as you have always and will always support me. Half a world might be shaking in their boots before they even see my kunai, but we both know that none of my accomplishments would ever have occurred if not for you. My life would have been empty without you and Naruto. Minato. Kushina smiled gently and stepped toward her husband. Only to be stopped once more. But, you know the importance of Naruto knowing the truth. It won't be that much longer before we could expect him to show the first signs of being able to manipulate chakra. And when he does, the Kyuubi will become a factor. Will the creature honor its promises? He seemed to be convinced of the creature's sincerity, so I am inclined to agree. Still, despite the conditions the Kyuubi made, we have to make sure that Naruto knows what the stakes are. We cannot be there to help him when he first meets the creature. We can only help him from the outside. And you know better than anyone what he will face. I still wonder if his warnings are there really going to be more people after the creature. Trying to capture our son to rip the fox out of him. Kushina sighed. I know that masked man did the same thing to me, but our son, Minato. Our son. I can't bear the thought of that such a thing would happen to him. I know, honey, I know, and as long as I breathe, I will never allow such a thing to happen to him. I know, but it terrifies me. Me too. I wish he was more concrete with regard to his warnings, but so far he has been right. Danzo's secret Anbu group and Orochimaru indeed being a traitor. And Kami that Hiruzen was there that day, Kushina grimaced. Yeah, he nearly escaped. If not for Sandaime Sama, I'm sure I would have fallen for his trick, Minato sighed. But after the death of the treacherous Zenin, the Hokage and his predecessor found so much evidence, the results of the horrible experiments they encountered that day still filled the worst nightmares Minato had. But to think he had prepared an arm and that it served for Danzo to plug in all the Sharingan he stole over the years. Escaped like that filthy Danzo, Kushina mumbled, showing that she had followed the same train of thought. That is exactly why I can't keep Naruto shielded forever. There are things he has to deal with and I'd rather have him prepared for when the time comes. Who knows what could happen if he reacts the wrong way. This is the Kyuubi, even if it made a promise, I'm still wary to trust the creature. It is the embodiment of hatred, Kushina repeated the words the Bijuu had said to her, one of the first times she met the demon when it was sealed within her. And that is why he needs all the skills he can get, Minato agreed. Both physically and mentally. Hiruzen agreed, didn't he? He did. When Naruto is ready, he will start helping us to train Naruto. Jiraiya-sensei promised the same thing. Even Tsunade-sama did, Kushina smirked. Though I think we should wait until Hiruzen and the pervert are finished training Naruto before we ask her for her help. I nearly forgot you trained under her back then. It was a really memorable lesson on evasion, Kushina shook her head slowly. That woman is nuts. Even when she is not drunk. All the Sannin are, Minato chuckled. Or were, in the case of that snake. Dawdling in front of her, Naruto seemed to be really happy to go to the park with her. Kushina felt more relaxed now that she had been able to voice her worries to Minato last night. It had been an issue she had been struggling with for a long time, but she had always repressed those feelings so that she wouldn't be a burden to her husband. Minato already was so busy with his duties as Hokage. Danzo fled the village when the net closed around him, but Minato was convinced that he still had plenty of supporters. Smoking them out, however, was no easy task. Fighting on a battlefield is so much easier. Out there, good or bad is decided by a glance at a hit I8. But here there are so many people scheming, especially now that the Uchiha seem to have become more and more discontent with their situation in the village. Kushina sighed. She suddenly noticed that her son was looking at her, head slightly tilted, with a questioning look in his eyes. Why are you so worried, Ka-chan? He really can feel my emotions, can he? It is a bit annoying that it doesn't work like that the other way around. It would be a lot easier to catch him when he is trying something mischievous. Kushina smiled at her son. Don't worry about me. I was just thinking about the problems Tu-san has to deal with. Would you rather go to Tu-chan? What? As much as I like to see your Tu-san, the two of us are going to the park. It was a promise, right? Yes. He flew forward and gave her a hug. Well, he hugged her leg, considering that he didn't reach any higher. And he was always strangely cautious with her, never jumping in her arms when she didn't expect it, or such things. As if he understood her weakened physical condition, despite his 4 years of age. Once they reached the park, Naruto immediately rushed towards the swings. Ka-chan, push. He shouted, with a wide goofy grin. Hold tight, Kushina warned. He really loved this. He liked the slide, the sandbox, and all the other apparatus where the little children could play. But above anything, he liked the swing. No, not just that, he liked it when being pushed by her or Minato, although the latter rarely happened lately, considering how busy he was nowadays. Enjoying the pleasure that Naruto radiated was also a good way to enjoy the whispers of the other adults around the playgrounds or the children who were pointing at either her or Naruto. Most of the looks were reverent, as if they felt blessed that the family of the famous Yondaime Hokage was nearby. But some of the adults looked at Naruto with a disgust that made Kushina's blood boil. The attack from the Kyuubi 4 years ago had caused many victims. As a result, there was much more hatred towards the creature than during her tenure. More people seemed to fear Naruto than Kushina could remember from her own childhood. It makes me shudder at the thought of what would happen to our boy if we had died that night. Minato said that Naruto would be treated as a hero, but I wonder if he truly understands what it means to be a Jinchuriki. He is too optimistic. Usually, I love that about him, but in this case, no. Kushina stopped that train of thought and forced herself to focus on the loudly laughing Naruto, who cheered higher, higher. The child truly seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of energy. Kushina had little doubt that the fox itself was an influence in this aspect, as she had felt the same sensation herself for years as well. But not anymore. The extraction had made her weak. She was physically brittle, with limited stamina and little resistance, altogether a mere shell of her former self. Even the famous Tsunade had stood for a riddle when she first examined Kushina. Minato had tracked her down several days after the incident when Naruto was born, but even Tsunade couldn't explain what that mysterious man had done to stop the seal from crumbling even further. Nor had she any idea on how she could heal Kushina. In fact, Tsunade was certain that any messing with the current equilibrium of her chakra pathways would spell unavoidable death for Kushina. That man had saved her life, but her quality of life had certainly dropped. She needed more sleep than ever before and grew tired as rapidly as an old woman. Initially, it was infuriating for a short-tempered woman like her, but just like on so many other occasions, Minato had been able to calm her. He told her that they should rejoice. Even if it meant that she had these limitations, they were still blessed by the chance she got. That strange man had saved her that night. He had given her a new life when all things seemed lost. She could see her hyperactive little boy grow up, becoming stronger than either Minato or she had ever been. But those were not the things she cared about after a half-hour playing around with Naruto. Right now, she was out of breath and exhausted. So, little Naruto did what he always did when this happened. Yugao-nichan. It didn't take more than 2 seconds before said Anbu appeared. Would you please not call me by my name, Naruto? The cat-masked woman sighed. But you're not a kitty, you're Yugao-nichan, Naruto shrugged. He didn't see the point of her mask, nor her codename Nico, at all. Ka-chan is tired, could you help her? She's too heavy for me to drag and too stubborn to listen, either. It is stubborn, not stubborn, Kushina corrected her son, even as weary as she was. He does have a point though, Kushina-sama, Yugao shook her head. It was the same chain of events over and over again. Naruto playing with too much enthusiasm and Kushina getting dragged into it while being too stubborn to take a rest when she needed it. There's a bench nearby, I'll take you there. I'll stay here, Kay. Naruto smiled after he hugged his mother. Yugao smiled behind her mask when she saw the little boy trying to cheer his mother up, even though it was completely obvious that he was concerned about her. That too was a regular occurrence. Minato-sama is right, it is impossible to separate mother and son. It's like they're glued to each other. That kid worrying about his Ka-san like that, Kushina mumbled under her breath as Yugao supported her while walking to a bench. He sees your weakened condition and worries about it, Kushina-sama, Yugao replied. And he is right. You should not demand too much from yourself. Kushina glared at her guard, but Yugao knew that it wasn't any serious anger. The Anbu might still be young, barely considered a woman at all, even by shinobi standards, but in spite of her 15 years of age, she was deeply loyal to Kushina. As in Yuzuki, it was her fate. She was the last of a clan which had sworn loyalty to the Uzumaki clan long before the system of the hidden villages was created by Senju Hashirama. As Kenjutsu and Taijutsu specialists, the Uzuki clan served as the perfect guards for the Fuinjutsu specialists of the Uzumaki. After all, unlike ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu took time to set up and apply time which the Uzuki bought for them. It was not that those old ties really defined Yugao's loyalty. No, when the servants of Kushina were killed, that fateful night Naruto was born, only young Yugao had been left. Her older sisters had perished along with everyone who had been amongst Kushina's and formerly Mito's entourage. But it had been Kushina and Minato who took the lonely girl in. To them, there was no relation as master and servant, but rather one between sisters. However, Yugao tried to act like a proper Anbu, ever since Minato had personally given her that mask 4 months ago. So, as much as Kushina hated it, Yugao called her Kushina-sama. Slightly uncomfortable with the silence that had fallen, Kushina decided to tease the girl. So, I heard Heiichi returned from his mission yesterday. The mask may have hidden Yugao's blush, but the fact that she nearly tripped gave her away. Hook, line and sinker, Kushina snickered. Naruto kept an eye on his mother and surrogate sister. He could clearly feel his mother's annoyance with her own condition, but he knew she would be well if she took some rest. Still, the swing wasn't fun all alone. It just felt so lonely to sit on this swing without his mother nearby. Other kids playing nearby kept their distance from him, making it even worse to Naruto. He never had many friends. His mother brought him along at times when she visited other clans, but most other kids were strange. There was this one time, 2 weeks after his 4th birthday, when she dragged him along to a tea ceremony and Naruto had to play with 3 children of clan heads. But one was only busy stuffing himself, Naruto got sick just from looking at the scene, the second was sleeping all the time, lazy ass deluxe, and the last one, the blonde girl, just didn't leave him alone, nagging, and more nagging. Sitting on his motionless wing, Naruto looked at the flowers bordering the playgrounds. Yes, flowers had definitely changed that day. Just when Naruto had been fed up with the blonde girl's nagging, she dragged him along to the gardens. After all, it was her house they were in that day. Naruto may not have had much love for her nagging, but when she started talking about those flowers, well, that day had been fun after all. But that thought in mind, Naruto jumped from the swing and began exploring the flowers. Perhaps there were some beautiful flowers over there. I'm sure some nice flower would cheer Kacchan up, Naruto mumbled to himself. With Yugao distracted by Kushina's teasing, Naruto simply wandered off unsupervised. At least, not supervised by friendly eyes. Boy, kid. Naruto turned away from his flowers and saw 3 bigger youths approach him. Hello, Naruto smiled. You know what your 2-cent did? Hollered the biggest one, a boy of about 15 years old. His long brown hair looked shabby and his clothes were much like rags. Naruto had drifted off and approached one of the orphanages housed by Konohagakure. 2-chan. Naruto frowned. Yeah, I know who you are, you shitty little brat, the tall boy growled. Your 2-cent is thought cage. Why yes, he's the Hokage, Naruto chirped proudly. Look at da goofball, in his green wimpy shirt, the boy mocked Naruto. You must be pretty rich, clan boy. Rich? Money, you dope. One of the boy's goons exclaimed, pushing the young Nemekis. Yeah, give us your money, you fool. The other chimed in. Or we are gonna beat you up, you hear. But I have no money, Naruto was now on the verge of tears. Something which the 15-year-old ringleader capitalized upon as he gave Naruto the final push, literally and figuratively. He ended up on his bum, with tears silently flowing down. Little Naruto had never been bullied before and he sure as hell did not like the experience. Seriously, what's with da whiskers, the eldest boy scoffed. What kind of freak has whiskers? The 2 kids were closing in on Naruto and the eldest grew brave enough to go one step further. However, the moment he moved his leg backwards, preparing the harsh kick he wanted to deal out, he was hit by a pebble. Hey, what the fuck? An entire volley of pebbles followed. One of the 2 minions was even hit smack on the nose, while the eldest, well, the stone hit him right in the rocks. Leave him alone. A little girl yelled. That hurt, the chief bully moaned. Dat freaking hurt. Before he could take a step towards her, the girl unleashed another volley. Naruto was amazed by the accuracy at which she threw. None of the pebbles missed and the 3 bullies quickly gave up and ran. Cowards, the little girl huffed. Now that she moved closer, Naruto could see the blushing girl. She had the oddest hairdo Naruto had ever seen, with her brown hair formed into 2 buns on top of her head. Her face was a bit dirty, dusty as she was from playing outdoors for the entire day. And her clothes, well, they were rather messy. They were patched up on her knees and elbows, but they were still obviously old as the fabric lost nearly all its color. Who are you? Naruto sniffed. Tenten. The slightly older girl lost some of her initial confidence when she saw the teary-eyed Naruto, as if she was uncomfortable dealing with a child who broke down like that. And you? Why did those bullies pester you? Are you part of a clan? Are you here all by yourself? Are you an orphan too? Are you? Little Naruto put up a hand, trying to get her to stop. It didn't work, though. Naruto? Where are you, Naruto? A red-haired woman hobbled towards them. Strangely, she had felt his distress. Not that she really understood how, but she had realized something was wrong with her Naruto. She had never felt anything like this before, though now that she thought about it, she did always have those vague pulses in the back of her head. Was this her link to her son? She never sought for it before, as she had forgotten about the hypothesis of that man, but now that she was looking for it, she found all the hints. Was this the connection established as this bond of being the former and current Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi? I will have to ask Minato-kun. Perhaps Dame-sama or that pervert would know more. Ha-chan. Naruto jumped up and rushed to his mother. Seeing how she got ignored all of a sudden, Tenten felt dejected and wanted to walk away. No, I'm not feeling ouch. Tenten-chan saved me. Why are you walking away, little girl? The woman spoke loud enough to make the girl freeze in her steps. Ah well Tenten didn't know what to say and her perpetual blush expanded until her whole face was red as a beetroot. I told you, Kacchan. Tenten-chan saved me from those meanies. Naruto chirped, darting towards Tenten. Before she could say a thing, his tiny hand grabbed hers and he dragged her towards Kushina. Thank you, Tenten-chan. Kushina made a small bow to the child, one which the bun-haired girl returned with a much deeper bow. The submissive look on the girl's face completely contradicted her earlier expression, something which even Naruto noticed. Are you sick? He poked with his index finger against her red cheek. Bewildered, the 5-year-old girl looked at the blonde boy. From his orange shorts to his green shirt with red swirl logo, she couldn't understand his behavior at all. Furthermore, his whiskers gave him a strangely exotic look, but it was his bright blue eyes which drew her attention. As if she was looking at the summer skies, these eyes radiated a warmth and cheerfulness she never encountered before. I'm not sick. I have to go home now, she shied away from his touch. This is a somewhat rough neighborhood, Kushina frowned. Do you want us to walk you home? No. No, that's not necessary, Tenten immediately tried to talk her out of it. But she didn't know Kushina at all. If there was one thing Naruto had to say about his mother, it would be that she was stubborn. She made an offer and he knew she would persist. I'm not taking no for an answer, young lady. Yes, there was the mother he knew. Naruto could see Kushina was still exhausted, but if they walked at a slow pace, she wouldn't have much trouble. Yeah, we're gonna walk on your home. Naruto-chan, it is walk you home, not walk on your home, Kushina corrected her son reflexively. But what Naruto continued to argue, as well as his 4-year-old mind allowed him at least, but Tenten barely paid attention. She knew how people reacted. They were nice until they would figure out that she lived in an orphanage. Children from orphanages were seen as nuisances, a fact which Tenten had quickly understood in spite of her age. But on the other hand, the warden had been very clear that it would be even ruder to lie. Plus, the fearsome red-haired woman had asked her a question. I have to answer it, I would be rude not to. Tenten sighed. She knew she had no choice but to admit it. I live in this neighborhood. Naruto stopped mid-sentence and looked curiously at the girl. At the orphanage? Kushina realized. And that is why she is wearing these rags, poor child. Ah-chan, what is an oropage? An orphanage, Naruto-chan, is a place where children live who don't have parents anymore, Kushina explained. You don't have a Ka-chan? Naruto blinked, turning to Tenten. He didn't even know such a thing was possible. No, Warden-sama says Ka-san died 4 years ago. I don't even remember her, Tenten said on a woeful tone. I wish I did. And your two-san? Kushina probed as carefully as she could. I dunno. They say I'm Ilgiltelmet child, Tenten shrugged. Ilgiltelmet? Naruto frowned, looking up to his mother for explanation. What's that? Dunno either, but it sounds kinda important, doesn't it? I'm sure it's because I'm super strong. Tenten boasted. It is pronounced as illegitimate, Kushina interrupted. A Kachahain, Naruto whined. What does it mean? Does it really mean that I am going to be as strong as Tsunade-sama? Tenten asked with starry eyes. How do you know, Bachan? The little blonde blinked. Bachan? Tenten looked puzzled at Naruto. Tsunade Bachan. WHWH what? Tenten shrieked, startling both mother and son. You dare call Tsunade-sama granny? But she is, Naruto rebuked weakly, half hiding behind his mother's leg, holding the green fabric of her dress as if it were a shield. She's a granny, even if she hides it under her guntinji. Gunjutsu. Ninjutsu, Kushina sighed, poking Naruto so that he would let go. But Tenten-chan is right. It is not polite to call someone like that. But she older than you and two-chan. And Gamage-san said she was just as old as he is. Don't try to be clever now, kiddo, Kushina warned her son not to keep defending himself. She wasn't tolerating any protests, unlike her husband, who was far too soft with their son. You need to learn to act appropriately to your standing, and you know how important Two-san's job is, right? Right, Naruto sighed. Wide-eyed, Tenten stared from Kushina to Naruto. Is your Two-san an important person? Two-chan is the strongest shinobi of the village. Naruto proudly stuck his chest out. Everyone knows the Yondaime is the strongest, Tenten remarked skeptically. Though, she halted when both Naruto and Kushina nodded in agreement. You're not trying to tell me that Minato is my husband, yes, Kushina couldn't help but laugh when she saw the shocked expression on the 5-year-old girl. Her amusement waned, though, when the girl fell to her knees and groveled in front of them. What are you doing? I'm terribly sorry, Tenten said on a submissive tone. For a second, curiosity had gotten the better of her and she had forgotten her lowly position. I apologize for acting so familiarly to someone as highborn as you, Milady, Naruto-sama. Milady? Naruto blinked. Stop acting so ridiculous, Kushina said firmly. Get up, stand on your 2 feet. The girl complied. And for Kami's sake, stop looking away. The red-haired woman added with more than a little frustration. Yes, Milady. It's Kushina, the elder Uzumaki grumbled. Don't call me Milady, it makes me feel old. As you wish, Kushina-sama. Erg, don't be so frustrating. Kushina exclaimed. It's just Kushina. Drop the formalities. Why am I a sama, Ka-chan? Naruto tugged her green skirt, demanding attention. Never mind that, Kushina turned around and shouted Yugao. Once. Within a second, the Anbu operative with a cat face mask jumped down the trees. Yugao had found Naruto before Kushina did, but considering how Tenten interfered, she had deemed it unnecessary to punish the bullies any further. The ringleader was hit especially hard, considering how he was limping and holding a hand in front of his aching crotch. That girl sure has one heck of a throwing arm for a kid her age, the purple-haired Anbu thought. Tenten, however, had no clue whatsoever of where the masked Kunoichi had been hiding, nor why she was watching them. To her, the masked shinobi were the elite of the village, something that went way over her head. Now she suddenly stood near one and near the wife and son of the legendary Yondaime Hokage. The boy's familiar comments about a great hero, the slug sage Senju Tsunade, left her a dumbfounded 5-year-old. Kushina-sama, could you please not refer to my real name when I have due? Stop it with the sama, you're just as bad as the kid, Kushina shrugged it off. Her exhaustion made her a little snappy. You're going to tell the orphanage that Tenten-chan won't be home before dinner. Kushina-sama. Yugao cringed when Kushina smacked her for the usage of the suffix. In her defense, it was such a habit to Yugao that it was rather difficult to change, no matter how often Kushina protested, hating those formalities from someone whom she deemed close. Besides, it was something that belonged to her function as Anbu. Yugao couldn't act formal and familiar while she wore that mask. Yet, neither Kushina nor Naruto seemed to bother about it. Which orphanage do you live in, Tenten-san? The Anbu decided not to question Kushina's decision any further. The one in the northwestern sector. Tenten completely lost track of what was going on. Good, Kushina grabbed her son by the hand and offered the other one to Tenten. Don't look at me like that, kid, it's just a hand. I am, what why? You saved my son from a group of bullies, so the least I can do is to repay you, Kushina smiled widely. And considering those rags, I think you might enjoy an afternoon in the shopping district. We'll first get something to drink, though. She really wanted to rest for a bit. Shopping? Naruto exclaimed in horror. Yes, shopping, Kushina replied sweetly. The underlying threat did not elude Naruto, so he just admitted defeat, dramatically sagging down with his head and tiny shoulders. He could feel that she was determined, so that arguing was useless. However, he could not interpret the strange mixture of emotions he felt through their link. With her status as the former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and his as the current one, it meant that they understood each other way better than deemed normal. It was as if their minds were, to some degree, open to each other. But Naruto was too young to comprehend her mixture of guilt and gratitude. Kushina was thankful that the girl rescued Naruto, but at the same time she felt guilty that Tenten was orphaned because of her, because she had failed to contain the Kyuubi. She knew all that happened because the masked man had struck that day, but still she couldn't escape that feeling of guilt whenever she saw someone who lost someone dear on that night. Even though he extracted the Kyuubi at the moment she was weakened due to giving birth to Naruto, Kushina still thought that she should have taken more precautions. But the contingencies which Minato had put in place had seemed enough. How foolish they had been, but how could they have known that man would strike? Even the one who had saved them had been too late to prevent the Kyuubi from damaging the village. The one did manage to prevent her from dying, and after Minato saved the village, he also managed to convince the Kyuubi that there was some bigger threat around. The masked man, who had claimed to be the infamous Uchiha Madara, had only provided the evidence for that claim. The mysterious man had prevented her husband from killing himself, prevented her from dying, and saved Naruto. Even when Minato had been the one to do all the fighting and all the sealing, that man's presence had tipped the delicate balance in their favor. Due to him, her son did not have to grow up as an orphan like this girl. But it had been close, so terribly close. Whenever Kushina saw a child like Tenten, she was reminded that it could have been her son who could have had that empty look in his eyes. Shopping? Tenten repeated Naruto's question. Kushina sighed and just looked at the girl. I have no money, the tiny brunette admitted with reluctance. DSK, as if I would let a little kid pay when I offer to take her out shopping, Kushina shot down the girl's hesitations. Even if it would be only for a day, she would give this child some hope and bring that lively sparkle back to her brown eyes. I'm not taking no for an answer, Tenten-chan, so just take my hand. And Naruto-kun, you stop sulking or we won't dine at Ichiraku's. Ramen? He asked. Tenten took a step back when she saw the fanatical glimmer in the blonde's eyes. Ka-chan, can we go now? He tried dragging his mother along, but she was too big and strong for his tiny frame. Is it truly all right, Kushina-sama? Only if you drop the sama. Seriously, if you keep saying that, I'll consider it as an insult. You hear me, kid? Tenten blushed and nodded. As you wish, Kushina-san. Rolling her eyes, Kushina internally decided to take what she could get and not object to the girl's insistence on politeness any longer. But I wish Naruto-kun had a bit of her manners, she conceded to herself. The irony of her own thoughts escaped her, because it wasn't exactly his father's fault that Naruto had such a disregard for formalities. Tucked into his bed once more, Naruto had held a long monologue to his father. And then Ka-chan bought this really pretty red dress. It had yellow fastening buttons. The woman at the shop told me that the buttons were called that way. And she said the dress color matched really well with her blush. And then Ka-chan and I did. Minato smiled as his son rambled on and on. Kushina had warned him that Naruto was rather lively today, having made a little friend and all. But for him to be talking for 15 minutes non-stop, he really takes after Kushina, doesn't he? Jiraiya-sensei was right when he said that Naruto may look like me, but acts exactly like Kushina. Even his speaking quirk is similar to Kushina, although he couldn't decide what sounded cuter, Teben or Tebeo. And when Ka-chan gave her that dress, she suddenly started to cry. Do you know why she had to cry? Tu-chan. Ka-chan said that Ten-chan was crying because she was happy, but why would someone cry because she is happy, Tu-chan? Tu-chan. Are you sleepy, Tu-chan? Oh, sorry Naruto. Yes, it was a tiresome day. Did Sasuke's family bother you again? The Uchiha did file a complaint, yes, Minato admitted. But you asked me something else. Yes, Ten-chan was crying when Ka-chan gave her that pretty dress. Sometimes people cry because they are happy, Naruto-kun. But why? Naruto sighed. I don't get it. Ah-san cried when she first saw you, Minato recalled. And do you remember when you gave her those flowers on her last birthday? She cried too, Naruto frowned. I thought she was illogical to the flowers. Illogical? Like when those stupid yellow sneeze flowers bloom, Naruto explained in the typical impatient way kids react when they think adults are slow on the uptake. Oh, you mean allergic. I said that, Naruto huffed. Illogical and allergic are two completely different things, Minato laughed at his pouting son. But crying is just a way to express one's emotions. You can do it when you are really sad, but also when you're really happy. She didn't cry when we ate ramen together, though even when she smiled really widely, Naruto frowned. Minato nearly choked when he saw Naruto's pensive frown. Not everyone is as crazy about ramen as you and your mother are, Naruto, he laughed. How can someone not like ramen? Ka-chan says that it is the food of gods. But ramen is not everyone's favorite food, Minato chided him with a friendly smile. You will understand when you are older. But I want to understand now, Naruto pouted, shrugging further underneath his blanket. But not today. Now it is bedtime for you, so I'm going to read you one story and then you are going to sleep. Like Ka-chan? Yes, like Ka-chan, Minato chuckled. His wife had really exhausted herself and now she was paying the price. She'd be fast asleep until noon tomorrow, judging by the look in her eyes when he last saw her. Let's see. The one with the llama is already finished, so why don't we start with Toad Red Coat today? Is it from Gamage-Isen? Naruto asked with more than a little suspicion. The man always tried to tell Naruto stories, but for some reason they always revolved around toads. Who else but Jiraiya-sensei? Naruto smirked, knowingly. "'Kay, I'll give it a chance." The little girl ran on bare feet through the cold night. Her red shirt was torn and her face covered in tears, but she couldn't go back. She could not return to the orphanage right now. Not after she hit him, not after she had ran away, who knows what could happen if she did. Surely the warden would be angry with her. Proudly wearing her brand new clothes, Tenten was beaming with happiness when she returned to the orphanage. "Don't smile like that," a girl 2 years older than her warned. "And why are you wearing those pretty clothes today? Don't you know Kurosawa-sama is coming tonight?" Fear was obvious in the girl's blue eyes, a fear shared by most of the older girls in the orphanage. However, she, like all the younger ones, never understood why. Mr. Kurosawa, a wealthy businessman, was someone who funded the orphanage. Tenten always thought he was funny. He always smiled and made jokes and often came by so that he could treat a girl, as he called it. Tenten never understood why the girls he selected were always so horrified. There was this one time, almost a year ago, when Isuzu, a 14-year-old girl, had been selected multiple times in a row. She was his favorite, other girls had whispered. At least she was until her monthly bleeding suddenly stopped. When that happened, 2 of Kurosawa's guards arrived and took the girl away. Even the warden, a woman usually unmoved by what happened to the children she had to look after, was distressed when that happened. Tenten had never seen Isuzu again. But when Kurosawa returned next time, the girl who had been chosen jumped through the window and ran away. Later on, Tenten had heard that the girl was located. She had been severely injured due to an accident, the warden had said. Something was wrong, Tenten could see that, but what? The whispers that Kurosawa was actually a monster couldn't be true, he was far too friendly for that. Tenten and the other girls now stood lined up when Kurosawa entered the room. A middle-aged man of average height, Kurosawa unveiled his blinking white teeth when he saw Tenten. "Oh my, such pretty clothes," he smiled at the bun-haired girl. In hindsight, Tenten felt sick at how happy that compliment had made her. Then again, she still didn't understand what the man had tried to do. She had walked along with the man, not suspecting his true intentions, but when they were in a room on their own, he had suddenly asked her all kinds of weird questions. Running through the cold night, Tenten began sobbing again when she thought back to how the man had suddenly grabbed her by the collar, tearing her precious gift apart. Out of reflex, Tenten had grabbed the marbles Naruto had given her earlier that day when they were shopping and threw them as hard as she could. One had hit Kurosawa in his eye, and in that moment Tenten had managed to wriggle herself out of his hold. Before he could whatever it was he wanted to do. Tenten had no idea what, but it couldn't be good. Somehow, she had gotten past his guards. She had ignored the screaming warden, who had made an attempt to grab her. But in her panic, Tenten was faster than she had ever been before. Whatever the man had wanted to do to her, she knew it was bad, so she ran faster than her short legs had ever carried her before. The warden would just hand her over to Kurosawa again. And after what happened to the runaway several months ago, Tenten had realized that just running away would be insufficient as well. This must have been what happened to the other girls as well. No, she needed help. Namikaze Minato yawned. He had worked for too long in his private study, again. Paperwork was taxing enough during the day, but he was working on a secret jutsu as well, whenever he had time. His Hiraition no jutsu made him the most feared man of the 5 nations, but if this jutsu would work, but somewhere along the ride, he had drifted away. His hair was a mess, a pencil spiking out of it with sticky ink in the strands of blonde hair. Half asleep, Minato wondered what had woken him up. He went out of his study, and when he walked through the hallway, he heard his wife grumble from their bedroom in a low voice. "Answer the door already, I don't wanna get out yet. You just flash over there and then get to bed." "Yeah, go flashy cunt." "Okay honey," he mumbled back. Though, before he was down the stair, he heard a lot of ruckus. Ramen, it was more a war cry than the sound of a child waking up, but Minato knew it was Naruto's way of waking up. It wasn't like this didn't happen more often. Still, it wasn't half as bad as Kushina herself, back when she was pregnant. The things she would eat Minato still had nightmares. "Naruto-chan, get back to your bed this instant." Kushina raised her voice. Ignoring the shouting and laughter, Minato walked to the door. I'll never stop surprising myself with how good Kushina's ears are," he yawned yet again. It wasn't a hard knock, but whoever it was, he or she just kept knocking. It was like they had a woodpecker on caffeine attached to the door. Coming, Minato had to shout to be audible over his noisy wife and child. "Darn, look at the time," he groaned when looking at the clock in the living room. This wasn't an Anbu either, as there were other methods to signal him in case of distress. Opening the door, Minato was surprised to find a crying, shivering little girl. He stopped mid-sentence when he noticed the girl's brown hair being molded into 2 buns. Well, the one of the right was partly unraveled, revealing long strands of hair. "You must be Tenten-chan." He recognized her from the descriptions Kushina and Naruto had given. The girl nodded, yet seemed too scared to talk. "What happened to your shirt, Tenten-chan?" Minato noticed her damaged clothes. When she remained silent, he frowned. "Come inside, you could catch a cold if you keep standing out there without shoes, wearing that torn shirt." She hesitantly followed him, and he put her in his comfortable chair in the living room. "You wait here, I'll make you a hot cup of choco," Minato smiled. Before proceeding to the kettle, however, he walked towards the stairs. By the sound of it, Naruto was now teasing Kushina by running around. "Kushina, could you come down for a second? We've got a guest. And Naruto, you go to bed right now or you won't get any ramen for a week." "A week?" the boy screeched. With a short rush, he was back in bed. He was so easy to manipulate. Putting a robe over her nightdress, Kushina walked down the stairs. Who on earth would be at their door at this hour? Her husband was busy in the kitchen, and he pointed at his chair. The tiny frame of Tenten was barely noticeable in the large chair, but Kushina saw the shivering child nonetheless. Before she could walk over, however, Tenten was startled by a blanket. As a true shinobi, she had not made any sound, so the little girl had never seen her coming. And in a household with Minato, Kushina, and the oddly perceptive Naruto, Yugao had never even considered how a normal little girl would respond. "Calm down, little one," Yugao awkwardly tried to approach the startled girl. "You are shivering, this blanket will warm you up a little. You can trust her, Tenten-chan. She is the Anbu you met earlier," Kushina spoke up while walking towards the 2 girls. "And Miko-san?" Tenten blinked. The hair matched. The posture matched. But how could someone this young be an Anbu? Little Tenten couldn't wrap her head around it. "Kushina-sama, why do you keep revealing my Yugao? Why are you using honorifics in this household?" Kushina glared at the offender. Covered in a blanket to a degree where only her eyes and hair remained visible, Tenten's curious eyes went from the Anbu girl to the woman who treated her so kindly the day before. "So, what brings you here in the middle of the night?" For a short moment, Tenten had been distracted, but now the memories returned in full force, why she had been on the run. Minato came close, and together with Kushina he guided the little girl back to the chair and placed a cup of hot choco next to her. But Tenten didn't notice the delicious-smelling beverage. "No," falteringly, she told Minato, Kushina, and Yugao about Kurosawa and his peculiar actions, how he called girls to him, how he had called her to him because she looked so pretty in her new clothes. A cloud of anger radiated from Kushina when she heard this. Even though Tenten had no clue what the wealthy merchant did to those orphan girls, the girl knew something was terribly wrong with what he did, what he had attempted to do to her, how he had tried to rip the clothes from her, how he had said that she would have to be nice to him. Tenten didn't know what any of it meant, and Kushina was thankful that Tenten had remained unaware of it. But the others did know. A year ago, a delegation from Kumagakure had visited Konoha. They had tried to kidnap 2 children that night and had nearly succeeded with the Hyuga heiress, but with Naruto, Kushina had rarely witnessed her husband's anger, and even on that night, he had remained relatively level-headed. But now he was enraged, furious at the thought that these sorts of things could happen in the village he led. Even Yugao, who had seen him in action a few times, only now came to fully realize why the calm and gentle Namikaze Minato was so famous, why he was the most feared man in their world. If not for restraining himself for the children's sake, she knew that the amount of chakra he would have radiated would be terrifying. "I'm going out," he could barely smother the unrefined fury in his voice. "I think Inoichi and Ibiki will be interested in a new guest that I will bring to them." Before anyone could say a word, Minato vanished in a flash of bright yellow light. Kushina could not feel any pity for the pathetic excuse of a man that Minato would hunt down and hand to the torture and interrogation department. "I know that orphans are always preyed upon, as they are vulnerable targets who lack the support of family and often have few friends. They are considered the lowest in the social ranks, and their vulnerability attracts these kinds of monsters. No, not just this Kurosawa should have to fear for his life, but that abominable warden as well. How could she sell out those little girls to such a creep?" Kushina had difficulty keeping her temper reined in. But for the sake of the quivering little girl in front of her, she had to. Tenten obviously had no idea of the horrible fate she barely escaped from. It would be for the best if she remained oblivious to this. No child should be aware of these kinds of things. But Tenten had run away from the only place she knew as home. She had run from the woman who had practically raised her, from the other kids whom she had grown up around. She had run to the only other person who had shown such kindness to her and of whom she knew where she lived. The little brunette, still enveloped by the blanket, launched herself at Kushina and cried out all her distress. Even a tomboyish girl like her, who often got into fights with older kids and still won her aim, was really a talent she had been blessed with from birth was just a little child. She was a child who had to vent her emotions, rather than keeping it all bottled up. Bottling up was something for the twisted adults, Kushina reasoned sadly. Of course, there was another child who was nearby. Little Naruto did not understand what was going on, and considering the threat his father had thrown at him, a whole Ramen less weak, he was wise enough to stay well out of sight. Well, it was not like he could ever hide from Kushina, who seemingly had a sixth and seventh sense for immediately locating him, no matter where he hid. But with her being distracted by Tenten, Naruto remained unnoticed. He couldn't hear what Tenten exactly told his parents, and from the fragments he did catch, he couldn't make any sense of why his father had been so terribly angry, and his mother Naruto could directly sense Kushina's anger. It was a deep, sorrow-filled well of rage. It was a foreign emotion to little Naruto, who had led a generally peaceful and happy life. There was only that odd night, almost a year ago, he had woken up from feeling his mother's distress. There were hard bangs outside, back then. Kushina had assured him that nothing had been wrong, but even then Naruto had known she hid something, just like she hid her true rage right now. But it wasn't so much her rage that surprised him. No, what confused him was that something within him responded. He couldn't define it, could not even remember if he had ever felt something like this before. There was this hot sensation, a strange strength welling from within. Even if it was just a little sensation, it was a minuscule particle of the enormous entity it came from, the entity hidden from little Naruto. It was to be hidden until the time was right and the child could meet the monster. But Naruto reacted to Kushina's rage, and this insignificant little gap opened, allowing tiny drops of chakra to enter his tiny frame. Regardless of the monster's will, Naruto drew it to him. As insignificant as it may be, it amplified Naruto's senses tenfold. His smell, his hearing, his what was it even that he sensed? Something was outside. It felt murky and dark, like something as dirty as his shoe, when he once stepped in that dog poo from that huge hound of the scary Inyazuka woman who had visited his mother. What was the boy named, who had come with her? Naruto couldn't remember. This sensation was completely different, but at the same time oddly similar to that dirty shoe. It was something which he didn't want to go near, something which repulsed him. Yet at the same time, it attracted him. For some strange reason, he always wanted to see what his mother told him not to approach. Had he been a little older, or simply a little bit less impulsive, Naruto would not have sneaked towards the origin of that odd sensation. But he did. Ushitora and Sazanka. They were chunin of Konohagakure, bland enough not to draw any attention from their superiors, yet having enough strength to catch the eye of a shady man who needed cheap hired muscle for protection. Muscle was what these two were, whenever they wouldn't have to go out on mission, they served as guards to the merchant Kurosawa. Although the two had failed their training, they still were capable in their own right. Considering how they failed, they had not been dragged down along with their former master. Tonight's job, however, got them into a predicament. The girl they were supposed to catch had fled to the home of the Yondaime Hokage, of all people. How did the little bitch even get in there? Ushitora whispered. Both men were of average height, both had black hair, the same pale skin, and the same black eyes. Some people even believed they were related, but as far as either Ushitora or Sazanka knew, they weren't. Nor did they think that they were similar. No, Ushitora knew very well that he was the smart one, while Sazanka was the one who had more skill, especially in the area of physical strength. But, thanks to an old injury he took to the knee, Sazanka wasn't as mobile as he once was. He grew a passionate hatred towards archers due to that. You said the Hokage has gone now, right? Sazanka asked. Yeah, the bastard suddenly vanished. You know how hard it is to probe for other chakra signatures while hiding my own. Who cares, Sazanka scoffed. His wife, that red-headed witch, isn't a shinobi anymore. So that leaves only that guard. Can we take that guard down by ourselves? Boy, you're not suggesting that we. Boss wants the little bitch gone, and if we snatch the wife and son of that blonde asshole away, I'm sure other villages would pay us handsomely. That would be something Danzo-sama would approve of, but how on earth do you think we could pull this off on our own? Ushitora shook his head. That little brat might incriminate Kurosawa, but considering how the Yondaime already left the place, the dude is already a goner. It sucks, but I don't think we're getting our money for this month. That's why I told you. We should snatch the kid and woman and make a run for it. He's the fastest shinobi in the world. How are we supposed to outrun him, you retard, Ushitora sighed. He wondered if Sazanka ever thought things through. Even when they were just recruits for Danzo's operations, it had been Ushitora who did the planning and strategizing. Needless to say, Ushitora didn't want to do this. He was in favor of cutting their losses and get out of there. Sazanka's bloodthirst would only get them killed. But before he could leave their garden hiding spot just outside the mansion where the Namikaze family lived, fate decreed that his plans were invalid. A window opened and a little blonde boy jumped through. To make things worse, the boy's bright blue eyes were staring directly at Sazanka. "Huck," Ushitora muttered, with his jaw scraping the mulch. "Awesome," Sazanko exclaimed in a whisper. Meanwhile, Naruto just stood there without a clue of what was going on. He just wanted to satisfy his curiosity about who or what radiated that dark feeling. The last thing he expected was to see a man with a drawn kunai jump towards him. Stumbling back, the little boy tried to escape. Escaping, however, was impossible. He was too slow, too weak, too tiny, and they were Chunin. Sazanko. Wait, don't do anything, Ushitora tried to warn his comrade in arms, but it wasn't just Naruto who was powerless against his opponent. Naruto cried out when he saw a fountain of blood erupt from the not kunai-wielding man's neck. Before Ushitora even fell to the ground, another flash happened. Sazanko looked down and saw that the hand which held the kunai was suddenly missing. Namikaze Minato dropped it to the ground. The fingers were still clenching the kunai, but the dismembered appendage served no purpose anymore. A father would never allow anyone to point a blade, no matter size or shape, at his son. "I see my seals failed to respond as they were supposed to," Minato glared at the trembling man. "I wonder what kind of jutsu you used to mask your chakra signal. It certainly managed to bypass my securities until you were foolish enough to channel your chakra, that is. D2-chan. Naruto, go inside. Tell Ka-san that I have the situation under control. But Tu-san needs to have a talk with this man first, okay?" "Hail as a ghost," Naruto didn't even bother to stammer a reply. He was shocked. Minato saw that clearly on his son's face, but it was inevitable that he would see such a thing. This was the boy's first encounter with death, and as much as Minato wanted to shield his son from all this, he knew Naruto needed to see this. It was for his own protection, considering how the boy had the bad habit of wandering off and exploring areas that he shouldn't even enter. Unlike Kushina, Minato did not have that sixth sense for finding the kid. Sure, he had a tag placed on his son's back so that he could always use his Hiraishin no Jutsu to instantly travel to the boy, but still Naruto needed to realize how dangerous their world really was. Child or not, he was the son of the Yondaime Hokage and the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Having enemies, regardless of his age of strength, was inevitable for Naruto. The day's encounter was proof of this. Minato suspected however that these fools were not after his son. They were too low class for such an assignment. No, these men would be the guards a merchant like Kurosawa would hire, the ones of whom Tenten spoke of earlier. If not for the seal arrays warning me, I could have been too late. In fact, I instinctively used the tag on Naruto rather than the one on Kushina. Had I been late, Minato's mood darkened. His son had staggered back indoors, so now the man could calmly turn towards this treacherous Chunin. The sheer rage which the usually so good-natured Namikaze radiated was enough to make the one-handed Sazanko soil himself. Especially because the man knew that there were multiple things he simply could not talk about. As low-level as they were, they still had received the restrictive seals which Danzo had put on his servants before he forced their departure nearly 5 years ago. Explaining how they masked their chakra, for instance, would already mean a large chance at the seal being triggered. Sazanko had seen people dying from that wretched thing he too had on the back of his tongue. Before he would finally die, the seal would make sure that absolutely nothing could be discovered from his corpse to the point of rapid cellular disintegration through the injection of a dose of highly corrosive, yet nigh untraceable poison. Orochimaru had indeed been a fearsome scientist, but those options, Sazanko chose the least horrifying path. With his good hand, he grabbed another kunai, and he fell to the ground crying out in pain as his other hand was cut off cleanly, just as his right one had been earlier. Tears welled up when Sazanko realized that the way of death would now be a slow one. Being interrogated and tortured until he finally gave in, at which the seal would trigger and claim his life. Fuck, Ushitora was right. Damn it, I should have listened to him. And that bastard even got a clean quick death. Yugao had felt the disturbance and rushed towards the door. Before she even got there, she noticed that Minato had already dealt with the threat. Still, she was at the perfect place to catch a barely conscious Naruto who stumbled through the door opening. Naruto. The girl put her arms around the boy and easily lifted him up. She quickly brought him to the living room, assuring his mother that the boy was fine, even though he seemed exhausted for some reason Yugao couldn't fathom. She suspected it was simply the shock. Kushina, on the other hand, went pale when she touched his head. Not now, it is far too soon. Kushina-san. It's nothing. Can you put Naruto into his bed, please? He'll be fine with some rest. I will prepare the bed in the guest room for Tenten-chan. How is she? Shocked, but who can blame her? After what happened to her. After what nearly happened, it sickens me that these people exist. And yet she fell asleep before she even drank a drop of her hot chocolate. There will always be those who prey on the weak, and orphans are weak. After all, there is barely anyone who cares about orphans. Unless they carry some kind of Kekkei Genkai, of course, the girl sighed. Filth, I hope Minato-kun kills that guy slowly, Kushina gnashed her teeth. Ah well, nothing I can do about it now. I'll go upstairs and prepare the bed. No way I'm letting Tenten-chan go back to that orphanage now. You can't just take her in like that, Kushin. Let them try to stop me, Kushina snapped. This little girl has gone through enough. She still blames herself for that night, Yugao realized. I don't think it is legally. Enough about that. The kids need to go to bed now, and so do we. I'm drained, I don't want to think about such legal crap right now. She sunk her fangs into this. I pity Minato-sama if he attempts to talk her out of this. It was early in the morning when Namikaze Minato finally came back home. As careful as he was, Kushina still woke up when he slid into bed. HMMZ, how late it is, darling? She asked sleepily. A little past 7. Did you catch him? He didn't need to ask her whom she meant by him. I found Kurosawa. Fugaku wasn't too pleased when he found out I was doing his job for him, but that's something that will be dealt with later today. The Uchiha and their pride. Kushina, they face discrimination and mistrust all of the time, so I understand why Fugaku is so stuck up about the rights of his clan, as well as their duties and responsibilities. Still, I think I made a mistake by handing Kurosawa to T&I. Was Ibiki too rough? No, Ibiki was taking some time off. Inoichi had duty tonight. You know how protective he is of Ino-chan, Minato sighed. He saw what Kurosawa had done, and well, the complete insanity that struck him after that was a result of Inoichi destroying his mind. I must admit that it was a bit unnerving to see, but the bastard deserved no less. In fact, his wife knew about his perversions as well. I already signed the orders to confiscate all his possessions, and she is thrown into jail as well. I think it would be proper for all that money to be used to fund the orphanage. As for the traitors who tried to attack Naruto, well, the one that I captured met an equally bad fate. What happened? Kushina rarely saw her husband being outright disgusted by something, but his expression right now. Some kind of seal was triggered during interrogation. We have yet to determine what kind of seal or what poison it released. I can help, Kushina interjected. Trust me, you do not want to see what is left of that man, Minato shook his head. Anyway, I got Fugaku to arrest that orphanage's warden and make sure the children are all alright. We'll figure out what to do with them later today. Even though he slumped down and seemed more than eager to get to sleep, Kushina had one more thing she needed to get off her chest. He used its chakra, Minato. What? Naruto? He used the Kyuubi's chakra. Are you sure? Minato was suddenly wide awake again. I felt it. It was such a small amount it would barely be noticeable for anyone but me, but still this is far earlier than we thought. Far sooner than he said. Should we try to contact him? He said he would return on Naruto's 6th birthday. But you know the risks he is taking. I will try to send him a message through Jiraiya-sensei. Let's hope that he can come sooner. It worries me, Minato, Kushina cuddled up against him. Why now? Why so soon? Did the creature lie when it agreed with his offer? Kushina, what did you feel when you heard Tenten tell her story? I was angrier than I've been in a very long time, Kushina admitted. Naruto said he can feel your emotions. There is some sort of link between the two of you, as former and current Jinchuriki of the same Biju. Considering how you always manage to find him, no matter where he hides, it's only even more proof of this. I think Naruto reacted to your anger. The Kyuubi reacted. Remember how you used to subconsciously draw out its chakra when you were angry, while you were still its Jinchuriki? Kushina paled. It is my fault. Can you be blamed for feeling emotions? Minato retorted. Would you prefer to walk the path Danzo talked about? Of course not. Then it is crucial that Naruto will come to terms with his emotions. I know you want him to grow up like an ordinary boy, but you know as well as I do that he isn't normal. He is a Jinchuriki. If we ignore that fact, we would only put him in danger. I understand, Kushina was reluctant but understood her husband's point. It is all we can do right now. I am not going to alter Naruto's seal. It would be a breach to the deal we struck with the creature. If we went down that path, we can be sure that the Kyuubi would never cooperate with Naruto. He'd better not linger for too long. Little Naruto felt a bit sore when he woke up. He had the weirdest dream ever. Tenten had been in it as well. And two strange men. He remembered how much blood had come out of one of the two when his father had struck the man in his neck. It had been a savage dream. No, Naruto rather had his nightmares about that weird yellow-skinned man with his huge feet. The tall man sometimes appeared in his dreams, chasing little Naruto with a long carving knife. But at least the curly palm tree-shaped red hair was funny. However, last night's dream was worse, much worse than the ominous laughter dreams he had at times. Sure, the darkness and giant glowing eyes creeped him out, but at least it wasn't as vibrant and realistic as last night's dream. Ha-chan. Kaya-chan, Naruto hopped down the stairs. I had a really weird dream. Naruto-san. Eh? That wasn't his mother's voice. Nor was it Yugao's. Peeking into the kitchen, two large brown eyes stared back at him. The perpetual blush that adorned the face and the trademark hairstyle. It wasn't a dream? Naruto exclaimed. And then Tenten and I went to the playground where we played the whole day. Naruto was one pent-up busybody filled to the brim with enthusiasm. We made a huge sand castle. It was really this gigantinormous. The little blonde rascal made exaggerated moves with his arms, trying to explain to his father how vast the sand castle had been. Probably it only came up to Minato's knee, but still. Minato enjoyed listening to the innocent stories of the little boy. It wasn't that big, Tenten protested. It was only like this, yet she joined Naruto in making those arm movements, trying to clarify how big the castle had been. From the looks of things, Tenten had tried to tell Minato that it had been about 1 inch shorter than Naruto had told. Why don't you two stay underneath your blankets rather than jiggling around? But I don't want to sleep yet, Naruto whined. Tell us a story, please Two-san. Quios. Tenten nodded in agreement. Half of Iwagakure's population would suffer a stroke at the sight of their nemesis standing powerless against the puppy eyes combination attack which Naruto and Tenten executed. Then again, these two had gone through enough this last week. In fact, Kushina and Yugao had dragged the bed of the guest room to Naruto's room, as both kids had been haunted by nightmares. Naruto had spent the entire morning thinking that he was still covered in blood, even though Kushina had washed him more than thoroughly, as she had been equally horrified. Kushina might have been a formidable kunoichi, but the sight of blood on her little boy made her stomach spin out of control. Meanwhile, Tenten had suffered a nightmare, thinking that there were still people after her. Considering how they were still little children, Kushina had thought that it would be worth trying having them share a room for now. Perhaps they could help each other grow over their fears. I think Tenten-chan isn't familiar with the story of the Rabbit Princess. Rabbit? Tenten frowned. Yeah, it is one of the stories Ka-chan knows from when she was little, Naruto cheered, as if it was completely weird that his parents ever have been as young and small as he was. You see, Kushina hails from another village, Minato smiled at the tiny brunette. And when she was young, she was told the story of the Rabbit Princess, which was a children's story in Yuzashii Agakure. How could a rabbit be a princess? Tenten was slightly skeptical about the name of the story. It certainly beat the Toad Prince and the Slug Princess, Naruto sighed. Gamage-Isen is weird. Tenten was confused but decided to let it slide. If she reacted to every strange thing Naruto said, she would quickly grow into the straight man of this comedy. Once upon a time, there were many kingdoms, Minato started. Each kingdom was ruled by a king and a queen, and each of them sought to expand their kingdom. So every kingdom moved out, amassing armies, and they fought battle after battle. This isn't a happy story, is it? Tenten frowned. Oh, but I haven't finished it, have it? Minato laughed. Don't stop, please. I won't, Naruto, I won't. So where was I? The Rabbit Kingdom. Rabbit Kingdom? Tenten thought this story became weirder and weirder. Yes. You see, amidst all the warring kingdoms, there was one which had stayed out of the war. It was called the Kingdom of Rabbits. This was actually a joke because the people who lived there had hair as white as a snow rabbit in winter. Because of a joke an old king had made, the Rabbit Kingdom had taken the animal as a symbol. It was said that they even rode to battle atop of large hares. Hares? But why were they called the rabbit? SSSSHHHH, Naruto hushed her. Don't stop Two-chan all of the time. And they were called rabbit because of their ears too. Naruto, stay nice to Tenten-chan, okay? Okay. The Rabbit Kingdom, however, did not join the other nations in their wars. While the other nations waged war after war, the king of the rabbits preferred peace. But even though the people of the Rabbit Kingdom grew far older than any other, the king was old. So his son, the Prince of the Rabbits, became the new king. Unlike his father, the new king thought that it was wrong to stay out of the wars. Do you know why? Minato asked. Naruto nodded, but Tenten looked questioning. To conquer all the other nations. She guessed. Oh no, he didn't want that at all, Minato shook his head. The new king wanted to bring peace. Peace. He went to war for peace. Tenten asked incredulously. Yes. He had grown tired of all the nations waging war and he wanted to create a world of peace for his only daughter, Minato continued. When the king was just a prince, he had tried to negotiate, to talk with all the nations so that they would stop fighting. But, because he was a rabbit, they all laughed at him. Because the rabbits were peaceful, everyone thought they were weak. The only thing that kept them out of the wars was because their land was isolated from the others. Since the rabbit king had sworn to let his daughter live in a world of peace, he started a war to end all wars. For the first time in centuries, the military power of the land of rabbits set foot outside their borders. And soon, one after the other, the warring nations fell. So powerful was the army of the rabbits that all wars ended. So there is a happy end. Tenten smiled. The rabbits brought peace and the princess lived happily ever after. No, I'm afraid this is not the end of the story, Tenten-chan, Minato sighed. The rabbit king had waged war for so long that he and his army wanted to quell every chance that there would be another war. In their greed, they stated that the entire world should be under the command of the rabbits. But the rabbit king wanted peace. Not power. He did. But Tenten-chan, when people fight, they often do not know when to quit. The rabbit king didn't know either. The rabbit princess was so happy her father had achieved peace that she prepared a great feast. But her father did not come home, as she had thought. He marched on. But the wars had ended and all the remaining nations had formed an alliance. Not because they wished peace or because they forgave each other, but because they were afraid of the rabbit king and his army. Poor rabbit king, Naruto sighed. Now, don't spoil the story for Tenten-chan, Minato wagged his finger. What happened next? The rabbit princess waited for days, for weeks, until the moon was full once again, Minato continued. And when she finally saw an army approaching, she opened the gates and ordered everyone to start the celebration. Except what returned was not the army of the rabbit king. The alliance of nations had proven to be stronger and the rabbit king had lost. Oh, what a sad ending. Tenten seemed rather dejected by the conclusion. I didn't say the story was ended, did I? Minato smiled. The rabbit princess fled from her castle, but she had lost her father, her home, and her entire people. Due to her father's greed, she had lost everything. Instead of giving her a world of peace, her father had made things far worse. But the rabbit princess knew of a secret, one which only the royal line of the rabbit knew. When she fled, she ran to an island. On this island, she stole a treasure. That's mean, Tenten huffed. It sure is. But the rabbit princess was desperate. You see, when the alliance had defeated the rabbit, they had started to fight among themselves again. And while the princess fled, she saw the suffering of the common people. She had lost her home and family, but she saw that many more had suffered that same fate. So the rabbit princess was an orphan. Like me. She was, Minato nodded. But where her father had failed, she had promised to succeed. Even if it meant that she had to commit a crime, the rabbit princess swore to end all wars. And with the treasure she stole, she became the most powerful person in the entire world. Wow. And she became the rabbit queen. With her fellow rabbits scattered, she no longer had a nation to rule. And because her father failed after being crowned king, she vowed to remain humble. Even while everyone loved her and called her the rabbit princess, she refused to wear a crown. In the end, the rabbit princess fulfilled the same promise as her father by giving her two sons a world in which all wars had ceased to be. And legend has it that the Rakuto Sennin, the sage of the six paths, used the very same treasure that the rabbit princess stole to create us, all the shinobi. Without the Rakuto Sennin, we would never have existed. He was the one who taught our ancestors how to use chakra. I wish I were a rabbit princess, Tenten touched her bun-shaped hair. Rabbit have pointier ears, Naruto chuckled cheekily. Perhaps we should ask Kasan if she could braid Tenten-chan's hair into the shape of rabbit ears. Minato teased. It would look silly. The girl, while always blushing, grew a few shades redder. You would rather stay a human than become a rabbit. Minato pulled up her blanket and tugged her in. You are a very wise young girl, Tenten-chan. I am sure you will one day become a woman as noble as the rabbit princess herself. Too bad there weren't any rabbit princes, Naruto pouted. There were always the toads. Minato laughed when he saw Naruto pale. You are already a prince, my son. A prince of Konohagakure. So sleep tight and dream of rabbits. Rather rabbits than toads. Toads are very friendly too. You met Gamabunta, didn't you? He was scary. Gamajiji was funnier. He was all tiny and wrinkly, with a little funny beard. Minato kissed his son goodnight and walked out of the room. Tu-chan. Could you please leave the door open, only a little bit? I don't. If the scary men come, I could. Naruto-chan, no scary man will ever enter this room. Besides, Tenten-chan is here as well, so you are perfectly safe. Hey. Thanks, Tu-chan. Sleep tight you too. Tenten stared at the place where the blonde man had just stood. Good night, Tu-san, she said to herself. Though, she did not dare saying it aloud. Why is this child so overly serious? He's far too quiet and his inside is a bit scary. Prodigy or not, this isn't exactly what you'd expect of a 10-year-old, Minato mused as he gazed at the boy in front of his desk. It was just another day at the office, with another mountain of paperwork, another horde of whining civilians, another pack of whining diplomats, and another crowd of whining shinobi. At times like these, Minato thought his job was boring and almost longed for the simplicity of being a mere jonin. Sure, missions could be a pain and would mean that he'd have less time to spend with his wife, son, and little Tenten whom they had more or less adopted, but all this whining Minato got quite sick of all the small-minded people pursuing their small-minded goals. Sighing, Minato resigned himself to his fate. He had asked Kakashi to send him one of his new and promising recruits, so he couldn't slack off by daydreaming. Hada Kakashi was the last of Minato's students and currently one of the strongest subordinates Minato had. Well, Sarutobi Hiruzen would probably still win if he'd had to fight Kakashi, and Mido Guy was a force to be reckoned with as well, likely at par in power. But the latter was rather eccentric, to put it nicely, while Hiruzen had retired as an active shinobi and now served as an elder in the council. But the boy in front of him was the boy whom Kakashi, as the head of the Anbu, had selected for this specific task. I saw your file. So you're Fugaku's eldest? Yes, Hokage-sama, Uchiha Itachi bowed. You're quite young to be a new recruit for the Anbu division, Minato frowned. I recently passed the Chunin exams. I saw your performance. You made quite the impression. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Itachi bowed once more. Are you aware why Kakashi sent you to my office? Kakashi Taicho hasn't told me, but I presume that you have a mission for me, Hokage-sama. Itachi remained perfectly calm and formal. Yes, but first I wanted to see if I can trust you, Minato decided to put his cards on the table. My son is growing up and he has been targeted a few times now because he is my son and because he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. You want me to guard him, Itachi deduced. If he was surprised he did not show it. Your clan is currently in upheaval. A large part of the village suspected that the Uchiha were responsible for the incident on the night of Naruto's birth, which led to quite a bit of discrimination against your clan. On top of that, there is the fact that your clan acts as the police force, which isn't exactly a position that makes them popular with a large part of the population. After all, those who enforce the law are rarely loved. You are wondering if my loyalties lie with Konoha or the Uchiha clan, Itachi understood. Kakashi wrote that you are rather distant, observing everyone around while rarely involving yourself when the mission doesn't require it. I know it has only been training so far, but are you trying to avoid being close to your colleagues on purpose? No, Hokage-sama. While many members of my clan are narrow-minded, I have no intention of causing war, Itachi looked at Minato. If the Uchiha were to revolt, it would cause a civil war. And a civil war and the subsequent weakness of our village would attract enemies. Iwagakure still hasn't forgiven you, Hokage-sama, and Kumagakure always tries to hoard more power. Impressed, Minato looked at the young Anbu, wondering how a boy his age could have such a firm grasp of the situation. While he had not said it, pointing at Itachi's behavior had made the implicit question of Minato clear to the boy. Are you acting on behalf of your clan? Are your interests deviating from Konoha? Well, Kurigakure is too busy with its fighting internal battles and Son Agakure lacks the power to confront us, Minato added. Right now, yes, but if Iwa and Kuma were to attack, Suna would surely follow. For a 10-year-old, you seem to think a lot, Minato remarked. Genius or not, this was not the kind of behavior I was expecting from you. Can you tell me, how did you become like this? Why do you think about politics, whereas most other boys of your age are preoccupied with, for instance, Belgiums? I saw things. Oh? Itachi sighed. He didn't like fessing up like this, but in front of his superior he had no choice. Besides, he was more or less under orders from his father to gain this man's trust, to represent the clan, and do whatever it took to improve the position of the Uchiha within Konoha and more of that foolishness. A few years ago, I stumbled upon the remnants of a battlefield. I can imagine that it was a sight which you didn't soon forget. I suppose that was when you awoke your Sharingan. Surprised, Itachi looked up to the blonde. What? You didn't expect that I would extensively research a person to whom I would entrust my son's safety. And knowing Fugaku, he ordered you to share all the intel you can get with him. For the sake of the clan, of course, Minato chuckled when he saw Itachi's response. Bullseye. So I ask you again, where do your allegiances lie? Hokage-sama, I am Itachi of the Uchiha clan. I cannot change that fact. Nor can I change the fact that I am a shinobi of Konoha and an Anbu who has sworn loyalty to you, Hokage-sama. I hope I never have to make a choice between my family and my duty, but I will do whatever I can to avoid creating another battlefield. If need be, I would rather be Itachi of Konohagakure. Good, that will have to do for now. You can report to my house. Kushina and Yuga will be there and show you around. A word of caution, though. My son is quite the handful, Minato smiled fondly. The way he manages to sneak around and how he can remain undetected when he wants to is a bit scary when you consider his age. But with your Sharingan, you should be able to keep track of him. If you do lose track of him, though, you would best ask Kushina. My wife always knows where to find Naruto-chan. As you command, Hokage-sama. Oh, and Itachi. Yes, Hokage-sama. If you want to survive near Kushina, you'd best not persist with that formal behavior. She hates it. Itachi nodded, although he found the remark rather strange. Within the Uchiha clan there was a strong emphasis on the proper showing of respect. Rank, experience, heritage, skill, those things were deemed vital. The Uchiha clan was the embodiment of the militaristic society of Konoha. Adjusting to his new work environment would probably take some time. Kushina-san, why is there so much noise in that street? Tenten looked up. She held the red-haired woman's hand, just like Naruto held his mother's right hand. Kushina had plenty experience with slippery and lightning-quick kids to know how to hold them on a close leash, especially in such a crowded area. But she had to get the groceries, and the children had insisted on helping her. It's the Drinky district, isn't it? Naruto frowned. Minato and Kushina had urged him to stay away from that street, although Jiraiya had occasionally tried to take him there when he was in Konoha for babysitting. Kushina had been quite furious at that, though it had been Tsunade who had gotten to the man first. After all, with his birthday approaching, the whole family had been together. So logically, little Naruto associated this street with only one person. Has Gamajisen come back again? As if on a cue, one of the casinos had its front blown apart. Oh, I know. Naruto laughed. Bachan. It's Bachan. Only Bachan destroys stuff like that. Kushina looked at the nearby Yugao with a deadpan expression. Make sure she calms down. She's probably on another drunken rampage. Shizune should be nearby as well, she'll be able to help you calming Tsunade down. Take them to Ichiraku's, I'll take the kids and wait there. As you wish, Kushina-sama. Yugao, I told you to stop it with the I know, Kushina-sama. Kushina could swear that Yugao was giggling behind her cat-shaped mask. Before Kushina could react to Yugao's cheekiness, Naruto took charge and dragged her and Tenten to his second most favorite place in Konoha. With an ear-deafening roar. Ramen. And Kushina wondered why Itachi often managed to finish preparing Naruto's bowl before he even arrived. Her eyes seemed more like shiny stars and unnerved Tsunade by no small amount. Then again, the large amount of alcohol flowing through her system made it hard to process everything. Though, she enjoyed the feeling too much to force herself to sober up. Kushina, who's this starry-eyed brat? She keeps staring at me. She's almost as bad as Jiraiya when I say I'm going to the onsen. This is Tenten-chan. Tenten-chan, this is Senju Tsunade. Though I guess you already realized that, Kushina smiled. The tiny brunette nodded vigorously, but apparently lost her voice. I thought you already had your hands full with the little gaki, and now you have taken in a second. Tsunade massaged her head, feeling a bit of a headache coming up at the thought that there would be a second Naruto. Meanwhile, Shizune was still looking at her with the serves you right expression of hers, undoubtedly thinking that the headache was caused by the sake. Damned kids. Well, Shizune was 20 years old, but still Tsunade couldn't stop viewing her as a kid. Of course, Shizune practically had the same thought about Tsunade, something which Tsunade's behavior more than excused. Wawan, you woman, Ketan quelled. His mouth was filled to the brim with ramen, making Tsunade wonder how he even managed to utter anything. What I we did for ya, eh? She replied, as she not understand what it was that he tried to say. But Tenten did. Before Tsunade could react, Tenten turned around and hit Naruto on the head. Don't you call the awesome Tsunade-sama Bachan. Ow. But she is. I told you. She's a granny. Foolish. Naruto had yet to learn not to argue against a fangirl, and now he had to pay the price. The look in Tenten's eyes was enough for Naruto to realize that he had to make a run for it. With a bowl of ramen in his hands, taking a bite every other step as if he was mocking Tenten, whom he still managed to evade. Stop there, you villain. Tenni, I told you that the old hag is just as old as Gamajisen, Naruto laughed while running, a few decibels too loudly for the hangover-suffering Senju. She's older than Kachan, so Namikaze Naruto. The tone itself was enough. He didn't even have to listen to her words, the way she spoke was sufficient already. He might not listen to Tenten or Tsunade, but Kushina was a completely different story. 2 words, and Kushina had him frozen in his tracks. Not expecting Naruto to stop running so abruptly, Tenten crashed into him, causing them to tumble over each other. Tsunade thought she'd break a few ribs from laughter when she saw the final result. With spinning eyes, Naruto lay on the ground with the empty bowl on top of his head. Empty, because the remainder of his ramen had ended up in Tenten's brown hair. Tenten, who was equally dazed, lying on top of Naruto. Apparently they both had sturdy heads, having knocked each other out in the accident. A small tickle of blood ran from Naruto's nose, making the intertwined position in which the two lay look even more awkward than it already was. This would have been so much fun if they had been a few years older, Tsunade snickered. Kushina glared at her. What? Too soon? I don't even want to think my little baby will become like that, Kushina huffed. You can't keep them young forever, Kushina, Tsunade laughed. Look at Shizune-chan. I'm no child anymore, Tsunade-sama, sober up please, Shizune sighed. Considering the way you are always acting, I'd say you are the kid here, she mumbled afterwards. I heard that, are the children okay? Tucci looked concerned from the other side of the counter. They'll be fine, Tucci-san, we've got a medic here. Can you check up on the kids, Tsunade? Kushina asked wearily. And she bowed a bit closer. The last of the Senju clan, could you check if Tenten-chan was violated or not? She added in whisper. What? Tsunade narrowed her eyes, glaring at the Uzumaki. I'll tell you the whole story later, but the chain of events which led her to us wasn't the prettiest one. Kushina's grim expression silenced both master and student, so they moved in to check up on the children before they would wake them up. Well, after Tsunade cleansed her blood of alcohol, of course. Medical ninjutsu for the win. Tsunade reckoned. Much to Kushina's relief, Tsunade found nothing pointing to anyone ever having abused a little girl. Tenten didn't understand what that man had tried to do to her, and Kushina was afraid that before all this, but those fears were baseless. Still, Kushina swore that she would personally ensure that nothing like that would ever happen to Tenten. At the same time Shizune, who was inspecting Naruto, began to frown. Tsunade-sama, can you check his chest? Doing as asked, Tsunade began to frown as well. Kushina, can you explain what happened to him? There were men who tried to attack him. Minato prevented it, but we found out that Naruto used some chakra which wasn't his. You know, did he ever break any bones? Any strange illnesses? Kushina shook her head at every question Tsunade could think of. As far as she knew, Naruto was the epitome of good health, being both a Jinchuriki and an Uzumaki. Why are you asking? Kushina asked worriedly. The way Tsunade kept scanning Naruto's chest didn't sit well with her. His chest, there seems to be a piece of bone which doesn't belong there. Tsunade searched for words to explain it. I don't understand. I cannot find any fracture, and none of his bones are missing either. And the shape. It is almost like he grew a new piece of bone on top of his ribs, Shizune explained when she saw the mother look in confusion. It is only a thin layer, but well, it shouldn't be there. Does Naruto need surgery? I am afraid he does, Kushina-sama, Shizune tried to comfort her. For a growing child, it cannot be healthy to have such a bone in that place. It would likely inhibit him from growing up like he needs to. Muscle tissue might end up deformed, etc. Well, the bone doesn't do any harm right now, the long-term consequences could be worse. Don't look so scared, Kushina. It'll be quick and the brat won't feel a thing. I do need to get him to a proper environment though, Tsunade shivered for a moment, reliving a bad memory. And this time you're getting him to the hospital yourself. I don't want to experience that ever again. I told you, I don't know where he learned those words. Half the village thought I wanted to abduct the brat. The other half thought that I was about to murder him. Nor what gave him the idea to scream and struggle like that, Kushina scowled. Though, I do suspect it was Minato telling Naruto that he would get an injection, that time. My husband is too soft when it comes to our child, she added a bit frostily. Look who is talking. Minato-sama isn't half as protective of the boy as you are, Shizune sighed. Shall we take him before he wakes up? That would save us a repeat of that entire scene. Seriously, Tsunade-sama, you should have known that you would only made things worse when you started to knock out those Anbu. I'll wake up Tenten-chan. Meanwhile, Uchiha Itachi was still waiting on the doorstep of the Namikaze mansion. Contrary to what Minato had told him, no one seemed to be at home. He knocked, but no one answered. He could not feel any chakra either. He considered it rude to force himself into the house. Besides, it would likely trigger one of the many seals he had seen. And he had no doubt that there were far more which he had not spotted yet. Going out on a search did not seem wise either, considering that his orders were to wait here. Acting hastily would probably result in making a very bad first impression with the family. He did not want to be responsible for giving the Yondaime a bad idea of the Uchiha clan. So he just stood there, waiting. Why does Naruto have to do this ugly thingy? It is pronounced surgery, Tenten-chan. Tsunade found something which shouldn't be there, so she and Shizune are removing that. It's my fault, isn't it? Tenten asked, already watering up. Because I didn't pay attention and crashed into him, It is not your fault, Kushina assured the little girl. So stop crying and just wait. Tsunade is the best medic in the world. Removing a wayward little piece of bone is no problem for her at all. As if on cue, Shizune peeked around the corner. Kushina-sama. Humming. Okay Tenten-chan, just wait for a minute, I'll be right back. Tenten grabbed Kushina's green dress as if her life depended on it. You going to leave me because I hurt Naruto, aren't you? Hey, calm down, Kushina kneeled so that she had her eyes on the same level as Tenten. I am not going to abandon you. And you are not responsible for what is happening to Naruto now. So calm down, Kushina bowed forward and hugged the distressed girl. Here I leave my hairpin in your care. It is something very valuable to me, so you can count on it that I'm going to be back, okay? Hey, the little brunette sniffed, holding the hairpin in her little hand. You're scared, I understand. Do you know that I was an orphan too? Kushina kissed the girl on her forehead. I know this is scary, but you'll make it through just as I did. I'll try. I know you are a brave little girl, Kushina smiled. You'll make a fine kunoichi one day, just like me. I'll go get Naruto and then we're all going back to home. It's not getting much warmer, Itachi saw the sun sink. He'd rather have been home right now. I suppose Akasama is nearly finished preparing dinner now. Sasuke must be going mad with me being away from home the entire day. Itachi sighed. A whole day of waiting. This was not how I expected my first real mission as an Anbu to go. Such a sensitive and sweet child, Shizune smiled wistfully. It saddens me that orphans have such a bad position in the village. Have you really adopted her, Kushina-sama? Not officially, Shizune, Kushina sighed. Minato thought well, being related to him also has the unfortunate consequence of drawing a lot of unwanted attention from the other nations. We took Tenten-chan in, but for the meantime we decided not to officially adopt her. If she were named Namikaze Tenten, we'd probably do her more harm than good. And with things as they are now, we also take care of her. I've always wanted a daughter, even though well, after Naruto's birth, I realized that giving birth isn't something my body can endure. But her heart went out to all the orphans of Konoha was a well-known fact, one which even Shizune knew. Tsunade once told her that Kushina felt guilty for what occurred that night when Naruto was born. That because of it, Kushina and Minato did their best to set an example for the entire village. Sadly, the clans of Konoha still held a lot of power, stopping any real changes from getting through the council. They only wished to protect and expand their own power, labeling those without blood relations to them as inferior. They assume that we are limited by our blood, that we possess inborn potential, one which we can never surpass, Shizune lamented. That way of thinking limits us, blinds us. It makes us arrogant. Even with all the research that Tsunade-sama has done, all we could show is that strength and intelligence might be in part decided by genetics, but that it says nothing about the quality of a person. Education, upbringing, the people around you, society in general with the abilities they are born with, each person can become so much that they are forced to make choices. Still, without effort, blood is of no consequence, and people will still be weak. Tsunade, how is my son? Kushina did not waste a second after she stepped inside the room. She saw her son, still asleep, and by the looks of it, Naruto would not even have a scar to remind himself that this had happened. A thin disc of bone lies on a platter, some blood still on it. Kushina looked at it after Tsunade pointed her at the object. We removed this piece of bone from the kid's chest, Tsunade mumbled. Well, and? This piece of bone is no ordinary bone, Tsunade hesitated, as if she was unsure what to say. I have never seen anything like it. It is completely infused with chakra. I think Naruto, he grew that piece of bone. What? I don't know, I need more time to figure this out. But I think he somehow created that piece of bone, Tsunade sighed. It would make sense if this somehow was related to the Kyuubi. Tell me, did you ever have this problem, Kushina? I know. I never grew bones. I mean, I once broke my leg and that healed in a day, but that's well, the regenerative factor the Kyuubi granted me. This isn't a matter of regeneration, Shizune frowned. That bone wasn't supposed to be there. Is it the deal we made with the Kyuubi? But that night, he said that Naruto wouldn't be affected for the first 6 or so years. So why Kushina didn't know. The Kyuubi manifested far earlier than they had anticipated. She and Minato had sent word to Jiraiya, who would try to contact the man who had saved them that day. But if he could make it to Konoha before Naruto would turn 6, Tsunade narrowed her eyes, paying close attention to Kushina's expression. You're hiding something. I wonder you and Minato always act so damn shady about what happened that night. We cannot say, Kushina looked at the Senju, with a grave gaze the latter rarely saw from what she had believed to be the open-hearted Uzumaki. Kushina held secrets too. We are bound by our promises. Neither Minato nor I can talk about it. You know, Jiraiya has this peculiar theory that someone else interfered that night. Even Sensei seemed to agree with that thought. But if you two trust the one who interfered, well, who are we to doubt you when we weren't even there? Tsunade said bitterly. Stop beating yourself up over that. You had your reasons for staying away from Konoha. I'm part Uzumaki, Kushina, and part Senju. If I had been there I could have been the one to that kid would never have had to suffer, Tsunade ruffled through the unconscious boy's hair. Instead, Naruto has to carry the Kyuubi with him for the rest of his life. I heard people talk, Kushina. The situation is far worse than when you were a brat, she spat. Those ungrateful dunces should fall to their knees and thank Naruto for what he does. He's the one who keeps the Kyuubi at bay. Eventually Konoha will understand, Kushina muttered, though even she had some trouble believing those words. But he's also Minato's son. And half the village seems to worship Minato, the new shinobi no kami. It won't be long before the clans will start to move, trying to marry their daughters to my little boy. Did you know the Hyuga gave us a proposal when Naruto wasn't even a year old? You're overprotective, girl, Tsunade smirked. Jiraiya once told me that he was looking forward to giving him the talk when he reaches that age. Over my dead body, Kushina glared at the snickering Senju. And mine too. No way am I letting that old toad turn the Gaki into a pervert, Tsunade said, smiling lovingly at the boy whom she more or less considered to a grandchild. Though she didn't exactly like it that he called her a grandmother, as she was far too young and beautiful for that. Well, I'll take that piece of bone and try to analyze it. But don't get your hopes up. Now, shall we take the kid home? I'm betting the little starry-eyed girl will be worried sick by now. Abachan took me to the hospital. Naruto had barely woken up and already he made noise for 2, 3, well, a class full of children. When are you going to stop calling me that, you brat? Tsunade snarled in mock anger. Love you too, Bachan, Naruto grinned. But why? Well, Tenten-chan knocked you out, so I decided to use the opportunity and give you a proper health check, Tsunade huffed. At least this way I knew for sure that you wouldn't run away or start screaming that I would murder you in the middle of the village. Ah, you remember that. Naruto sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Of course I do, you little imp. I got a full platoon of Anbu after me because of that, damn it. Oops sorry, though the smile in Naruto's twinkling blue eyes told Tsunade that he'd do it right again. But no matter how mischievous he was, no matter how he could get under her skin at times, she never could stay angry at him for long. Sorry, what's sorry? What did you do this time, Naruto? Kushina muttered. She and Tenten entered the living room carrying tea and cakes. Well, Tenten carried the cakes, as Kushina didn't want a 5-year-old carrying boiling hot water. Shizune sat in a chair, a bit drowsy now that she could finally calm down. Looking after Tsunade while she was in a gambling joint was exhausting work and terrifying. It wouldn't have been the first time that the Senju blew all their money away in one afternoon and then spend the rest of the week gambling away money from others. Yugao sat on the sofa, calmly enjoying the banter between Naruto and Tsunade. It was hilarious how the world's most feared kunoichi could get fooled by a little 4-year-old. Better entertainment was nowhere to be seen. The last person just stood awkwardly in the corner of the living room and it was painfully obvious how unsure he was about how and where he was supposed to be. This person was the young Anbu who was ordered by Minato to guard Naruto just as Yugao served Kushina's guard. Well, Itachi would only be around during the day, unlike her. Do you also want some tea, Itachi-san? Kushina asked offhandedly, completely ignoring his codename or the fact that he was supposed to be an active duty Anbu at the moment. Seeing his plight, Yugao began to chuckle. It's easier to surrender. In this house you won't survive for long if you keep acting so uptight. She'll kill you, Yugao pointed at Kushina. And if she doesn't get you killed, then this little blonde firecracker will drive you insane. Seriously, just forget about the formalities and relax. I suppose little Miss Know-It-All will also stop calling me Kushina-sama then. That's an exception, Kushina-sama, Yugao laughed, though she immediately had to dodge the spoon that Kushina was using to stir her tea. Being the sweet tooth she was, Kushina always added a load of sugar to her tea, to the point where even Naruto spat it out. Unless he would get Ramen in return, of course. I'll try, Itachi muttered, unsure how on earth a household of a shinobi of Minato's stature could be in such chaos. It was something completely foreign to Itachi, despite having a little brother who seemed to behave like a chipmunk on coffee half of the time. When Kakashi first talked about a bodyguard mission, Itachi had thought that it would be boring. But after 30 minutes of Naruto, he began to think that this would become good training. Keeping up with a child as hyperactive as Naruto-san would be good endurance training. Perhaps I should buy some training weights to make things even more challenging. Watching how Naruto stole Tsunade's cake and made a run for it, being chased by the famous Lug Princess herself, Itachi decided to wait before he'd buy those weights. This could become exhausting enough even without the extra weights. And, what mission did you receive? Uchiha Fugaku was stern as usual. The head of the Uchiha clan, as well as the leader of the Konoha military police force, was never too open and caring when it came to his children. While Itachi had long since adapted to it, his little brother Sasuke seemed to have more trouble coping with their distant father. I am to guard the son of the Yondaime Hokage. Fugaku stared at his son, but both remained silent. Eventually, Fugaku decided to break that silence after a pause. Unexpected. To think that man would assign you as a guard of his own son in Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. And yet he did, Itachi frowned slightly. While being honored, he did not expect his father to give such a response. Otu-sama. The clan has often been accused of being behind the attack 4 years ago, Fugaku explained, though it was odd for Itachi to see the man so cautious. The Yondaime himself tried to sway the people, Fugaku said bitterly. But when asked, he never gave a direct answer on whether or not an Uchiha was involved. His secrecy regarding that night made things worse for us. Yet he treats the clan fairly. Yet he left us to fend for ourselves. He stood by as the council isolated us more and more, and Hifugaku grimaced, some of his anger showing through his cold mask. But enough about that. It is a good thing that you were assigned so closely to him. Try to gather as much information as you can for the clan. As he even realized that Hokage-sama already saw through this facade. How blinded have you become, how blind has our clan become, father? Itachi was a bit surprised by the short-sightedness of his father. Yes, Otu-sama. It was late in the evening, after everyone had already gone to bed, when Minato finally returned home. He knew Kushina would put Naruto and Tenten in their beds early today. After all, the two of them were to go to the birthday party of the Yamanaka heiress tomorrow, and Minato knew that Kushina would need a rest as well. While she never complained to him, Minato could see that his wife always suffered from the aftereffects of the extraction. Still, both knew that they couldn't complain, as never before her head a Jinchuriki had survived that. He tried to get into bed silently without waking his wife, but even the infamous yondaime would fail at times. Then again, Kushina was already awake. In fact, she was so preoccupied by her thoughts that she hadn't slept at all. Seeing how Minato was finally here, she practically dragged him in bed next to her, and with a hushed voice, she told him of everything that had transpired that day. I got a message from Jiraiya-sensei, Minato admitted. He said that he'll try to contact him. But somehow, he couldn't locate him through his network of informants. Nor the toads. The last thing we knew is that he wanted to travel to Kurigakure. Kiri is a chaos now, Kushina gasped. You don't think that he's behind? That wouldn't be impossible. But there is a possibility that he's delayed. And I cannot involve myself, not without causing war with Kiri. At which Iwa and Kumo would gladly jump to help Yagura. Minato was surprised by the bitterness in his wife's voice. That is right. He wouldn't want us to risk a world war. You know he is competent enough, despite the weaknesses he has. That is why I told Jiraiya-sensei not to enter Mizu no Kuni. Besides, sensei is already suspicious enough as it is, Minato said tiredly. As for Naruto's situation with that bone, I'll order some people around so that Tsunade gets some help figuring out what it is. You don't know. Kushina frowned. I had hoped that perhaps you would. I have nothing to base my suspicions on. Anything I'd say would probably be nonsense. But, Kushina urged. She wasn't a fan of the carefulness Minato could display at these kinds of moments. She was far too impatient for that sort of thing. Then again, it was probably also the reason why Minato was considered a genius, as he was the one who thought things through before he acted, unlike herself. There was only one clan he knew of whom were capable of bending their skeleton to their wills. But they had a bloodline that had died out with them. But could it be that Naruto somehow had the same potential? Or was it the Kyuubi? Chikatsumayaku, Minato mumbled. Come on Naruto, finish your breakfast, Minato sighed. His son was more focused on playing around with his food rather than eating it. Yeah, if you don't hurry, we'll be late, Kushina warned. Late? What for? Is it oh no, Bachin is in town, Naruto paled. It's another examination, isn't it? No, it isn't, Kushina frowned. Does she want to take us to the petting farm again? Naruto became even paler. What did Tsunade-sama do at the petting farm? Tenten stared curiously at the white as a corpse blonde. She wondered what could trigger such a response from him. She has a thing for pigs. And a thing for that stinky sake stuff, so at the end of the day she tried to liberate all the little piglets, Naruto shook his head. It was a total chaos. Even Shizune Nichin didn't know what to do. You know she can't take you there again, Minato chided his son. Tsunade still has that area ban going, so she isn't allowed to get near that petting farm for the next 2 years. She could have just paid for the repairs, but Kushina rolled her eyes. She agreed with Shizune that Tsunade's love for gambling was a disaster. She had neither luck nor skill, nor did she ever have collateral for the countless loans she made to the point where Sarutobi Hiruzen once joked that Konoha would have to file for bankruptcy within the first week if Tsunade ever became Hokage. But don't tell me you've forgotten, Naruto-chan. Forgotten? What? His blue eyes widening in surprise. Don't you wish to meet Hinata-chan again? Minato teased. Hinata-chan is a bit weird, Naruto frowned. She's so shy, I can't even talk with her. She always goes deep and hides from me. I'm not that scary, am I? Not everyone can be as assertive as Temari-chan, his father chuckled in response. She's bossy. Though, she's very nice to Gaara, Naruto laughed along, completely oblivious to the insinuation his father had made. Not that Kushina was, mind you. The glare she sent Minato's way was particularly frightening. Minato quickly decided to hide behind his newspaper, peeking through a small tear in an ad for Marked Man's sake. He still felt the pain from how his wife reacted when the Council of Suna made a certain proposition to strengthen the alliance between their villages. Temari. Gaara. Tenten wondered. We've been in Supergakure last month. Naruto chirped. Gaara's dad is a dusty shadow. Naruto don't confuse Tenten-chan, the red-haired woman sighed. Yes, her husband had taken Naruto along during his last visit to their allies. Rasa, the Yondaime Kazekage, had more or less suggested that Temari and Naruto could be good friends, even before that preposterous letter from his council followed. Thus, Temari had already been added to the threat list in Kushina's bingo book of potential dangers to her little boy. Along with Hinata, Ino, and many more who Kushina thought were chasing after Naruto because of Minato. Gaara's father is the Kazekage, the Wind Shadow, and their village is Sunagakure, not Supergakure. How many times do I have to tell you? Names are difficult, Naruto pouted. Like Konohagakure. Why can't we just call the village? No. We're not going to rename Konoha to Ramengakure, and that is final. Kushina snapped. Now finish your sandwich so that we can get you dressed properly. You as well, Tenten-chan. Bear, why do I have to go too? Tenten wondered. And where? I told you before we went shopping yesterday. The two of you are going to birthday party of Ino-chan. Party Naruto once again started to pale. Will it be another boring dress-up party with those Seerthinjis? No, that was at the Hyuga compound, not the Yamanaka compound, Kushina grumbled. She wasn't too fond of the whole tea ceremony thing either. Though, at least tea wasn't as revolting as coffee. After adding enough sugar, tea wasn't too bad. And you've met Ino-chan before, right? She showed you their gardens last time we visited. You know she isn't the type for such ceremonial stuff either. Just wait a few years and she'll love ceremonies, Minato snickered from behind his paper, earning him a kick against the shin. Not that Naruto noticed any of this, he was far too relieved that it would be a fun party and not a borefest like last time he had to dress up for a party. So he stopped loitering around and ate his sandwich. However, he was tempted to use it as a shuriken again. He loved shuriken practice. But one look at his mother had steered him away from that course of action. Her hair began to float a little, which was Naruto's run-like-hell signal. Let me sleep, I'll be right back darling. A large someone twisted within a pile of blankets, mumbled something which was barely audible. Just gimme some time. I'll be hard in a little while, sweetie. The messenger coughed, not very comfortable to be there. At all. I suggest lem sleep. Got a wangover. Honorable sir, I need to deliver a message. Massage. Massage would be great, a lecherous and rather intoxicated voice sounded from below the blankets. Like hell I'm going to give you a massage. I've got a message. Wake up. Wah? A tuft of white hair struggled to escape from the blankets. Jiraiya-sama, you've got to wake up. Kuazuki. Jiraiya, completely pissed, blinked in the light. You're not the girl I paid for, Kuzuke. I suppose I should ask Gamabunta-sama if he could deliver the message. The small red toad suggested. With blue markings around the eyes and on top of his head and a pair of green goggles dangling around his neck, this was without a doubt Miyabaki-san's fastest messenger toad. Kasuke. Bunta? Jiraiya groaned. No, Nabunta headache. But his shouts. We received a message for you, Kasuke sighed. Their summoner could be so annoyingly irresponsible at times. Minato. Did something happen to Naruto again? The thought of that woke the man up. He still had one hell of a headache and he probably had more alcohol than blood in his veins, but at least he was paying attention. Nah, Kasuke shrugged. Here, he threw the scroll at Jiraiya and poofed away in a tiny cloud of smoke. Jiraiya wished that the toad had read it to him. He really needed to focus his eyes, his drunken head was having difficulty reading the rather movable letters. He was already on his way to Konoha. What? Crap. Kushina-sama, are you sure that I should? Itachi, Kushina looked sternly at the masked young Anbu. Cut it out with the stiff nonsense. Don't you dare to copy Yugao's cheekiness, or I'll make sure Minato will assign you the shittiest missions that you can possibly get. As you wish, Itachi mumbled. He never understood the woman's dislike of formal behavior. But it might be better if I stay back, rather than come along. Minato ordered you to guard Naruto-chan, right? The red-haired woman frowned. Besides, don't you want to see Mikoto-chan? Yay, Sasuke is at the party too. Naruto cheered, drawing the wrong conclusion. I'm afraid my parents and Sasuke were not invited to the celebration of the birthday of the Yamanaka heiress, Itachi sighed. Ugh, that discriminatory drivel again, Kushina grimaced. Dang, and here I was looking forward to seeing your mother again. Achin, what is discriminatory? Naruto struggled to get the word out. Discriminatory? No, that's not right either diminutory. It is discriminatory, and it means that some people don't like Itachi's clan. Kushina ended her son's struggle with a word before he would injure his tongue. Really? That sounds stupid. Don't you think, Tenten-nichan? And Nichan? Tenten exclaimed, tripping over her own feet. Yup. You're living with us, so you're my Nichan. You're a girl, right? Naruto chirped, completely oblivious to the shock of the orphan girl. Shifting topic suddenly, Ino-chan's house became even more flowery than the last time, didn't it? He observed. The four of them stood in front of a larger-than-average house, which seemed to be flooded by the greatest variety of flowers and plants which Tenten had ever seen. This was quite the feat, considering the time of year. Normally such a variety of flowers would never be in bloom on the 23rd of September. Thank you, Kushina-sama, a female voice sounded from behind. Yuriko, why do you keep doing that? Kushina scowled. Sneaking up on you or teasing you with the honorifics you detest so much. Yamanaka. Yuriko smirked. She knew her former classmate had quite the short temper very well. Though, she wouldn't call the woman a tomato anymore, she learned that lesson. The hard way. Naruto, why don't you go in and wait, who is this lovely young lady? The brown-haired Yamanaka wondered, deliberately ignoring what she heard about Uchiha Itachi. The calm and collected woman, whose behavior was much unlike her daughter, looked curiously at Tenten. Tenten, who suddenly felt very much out of place, would rather have kept herself hidden behind Kushina, but she knew that would be rude. Hello, I am Tenten, Yamanaka-sama, she bowed. She knew that if this was the mother of Ino, the heiress of the clan, this woman would also be the wife of the head of the Yamanaka clan. Someone far higher in the hierarchy than a lowly orphan like Tenten. Tenten-chan is living with us, as of recently, Kushina said on a tone which didn't tolerate any discussion on the matter. So, considering how you invited Naruto, we also brought her along. The Yamanaka looked at Kushina, slightly frowning, yet remained silent on the matter. As such, Kushina pushed Naruto into the direction of the house. You two seek out Ino-chan, okay? Do you have the present for her birthday? Yep, Naruto smiled, holding the package high. As the two children scurried off, Naruto more or less dragging the shy Tenten along, Yuriko turned to the wife of the Hokage, while the two women followed the children. So, what's the story behind this Tenten girl? The children, closely followed by Itachi, ran into the building. Naruto proudly holding the wrapped present for Ino. The blonde man at the door smiled and let them through, although he did frown a little due to the presence of an Anbu. Then again, this was the son of the Yondaime Hokage. Both Iwagakure and Kumagakure would celebrate if the boy never reached maturity, fearing the rise of a second Kairoi Senko. The house itself was completely decorated, overabundantly so. Then again, Ino was treated like a princess within her clan. The sheer luxury left Tenten stunned. The young orphan had never seen things like these, not even in the Namikaze household. Then again, Minato and Kushina preferred a more down-to-earth lifestyle. Both preferred a normal life, neither being pretentious enough to view themselves as nobility. Clans, however, had a different view on things. Tenten had not had the opportunity to acquaint herself with the strange world of clans yet. Naruto, is it really okay that I am here? Tenten looked around. All the people here were dressed so richly, making her feel completely out of place. Sure, why not? Naruto frowned, not understanding why an orphan like Tenten felt insecure. This is a party, let's find Ino-chan and have fun. I want to show you the garden, the flowers really looked. That was as far as Naruto got. All Tenten saw was a blonde blur, one which rudely pushed her aside and rushed at Naruto. Next, Itachi landed, separating the child he was guarding from a little loud blonde girl. Dazed and confused, Naruto needed a few seconds before he realized what had happened. By that time, the girl was already shouting at Itachi. Instantly, half a dozen Yamanaka surrounded the lone Uchiha, kunai drawn, and ordered him to put the girl down. Still not understanding what all the fuss was about, Naruto jumped in to protect his protector. Step aside, Namikaze-san. We have to apprehend the Uchiha traitor, one of the blonde men growled. Itachi Naichin isn't a tractor. Naruto shouted at the man, not knowing the meaning of the word yet well aware that the man intended to hurt Itachi. How do they know I am an Uchiha? Itachi had never realized it, but somewhere along the line he had activated his Dojutsu. The Crimson Sharingan gave away his identity and his clan, in spite of the mask he was wearing. Inwardly, Itachi scolded himself for his lack of composure, but it was too late to undo it now. He had clearly seen the girl wielding something made of metal, and he was under strict orders to protect Naruto, even if it meant staining his clan's name in this case. However, Itachi knew that these men were already prejudiced. They were among the large group within Konoha that secretly blamed the Uchiha for what happened during the night of the Kyuubi attack, which was also the reason why his parents and his little brother had not been invited. Hey, what's going on in here? Kushina, flanked by previously hidden Yugao, approached. Why the hell are you idiots attacking Naruto's guard? The Uchiha, the Yamanaka nearly spat out the word. He attacked Ino-chan, and cut it out with this nonsense, Kushina pointed. What is the girl holding? A knife, one of the Yamanaka admitted sheepishly. And this Anbu is ordered by my husband to guard Naruto against any threat, foreign or domestic, Kushina bit back at the six. How would you interpret a situation where an armed girl rushed at my son? She already knew well enough how Ino responded when she saw Naruto. The girl was a little bit too outspoken in her liking for Naruto in Kushina's opinion, but something which Inoichi no doubt wouldn't mind. I'm getting a bit paranoid. At every turn I see people who want to marry their daughters to my boy. The red-haired woman scowled at the thought that people were after Naruto solely due to his relation to Minato. I'm sorry, Ino said a bit glumly. But I only wanted to show Naruto-kun a new flower. That's why I had the knife, it's just for gardening, you know. Let's all just forget about this, okay? Inoichi smiled jovially, although the look he cast at his clanmates said more than enough. I'd like it if your guard was a little less jumpy, though, he chuckled, but Kushina knew he was very serious underneath his smiling facade. As protective as she was over Naruto, this man was perhaps even worse when it came to his daughter. It won't happen again, Kushina promised. However, I'd like it if your men were a little less prejudiced when it comes to the Uchiha clan. Shall we ignore politics for today? Inoichi's smile had faltered just enough in his response for Kushina to see where he stood. Obviously the Yamanaka clan was no friend to the Uchiha, much like the Aburame and the Hyuga. Then again, some of the records they had found within Danzo's office had suggested links between Danzo and the Yamanaka clan. Sadly, Minato had never been able to find any real evidence. But Danzo's principles have not been forgotten. He may have fled, knowing that Orochimaru's death would create a problem for him too, but those who supported him are still around. Kushina suddenly felt uncomfortable. Danzo's ideas on the usage of Jinchuriki had been anything but subtle, after all. How many people shared those thoughts? How would these people see Naruto? "Come on, Naruto-kun," Ino hopped to him and dragged him outside. Not knowing what to do with herself, Tenten just stood there and looked around, lost in a crowd where she didn't feel like she belonged until Kushina gestured to her, telling her to follow Naruto and Ino. Kushina would rather have kept Naruto close, but she couldn't ignore Inoichi and Yuriko either. Besides, the Nara and Akimichi families were already approaching as well. "Damn you, Minato-kun. Using your position as an excuse to get out of this," she grumbled inwardly. She didn't like leaving her son with a girl as assertive as Ino. Then again, this was also a reason why she had insisted on bringing Tenten along, invited or not. And considering how the other children, the Nara boy literally had to be shoved out by his mother, also went outside, let them play around. They're just kids. And Itachi is keeping an eye on them as well. "I had hoped to meet you today, Namikaze-sama," the Nara started. And this was why Minato tried to avoid parties. There was too much politics, while he went to great lengths to remain neutral between the clans. "See, Kasen got all the roses to bloom again." Ino beamed. While Naruto had been weary of the rather bossy and overbearing girl, they shared one thing. A love for flowers. The difference, however, was that Ino was raised in a family where flowers were a daily business, while Kushina didn't have much love for gardening. After the extraction of the Kyuubi, Kushina left those sorts of taxing jobs to others. She was already struggling to manage the household independently, although Yugao imposed her help more often than not, so Kushina usually left the garden to others. She never had those green fingers like Yuriko, so hiring a gardener had been easier for the Namikaze family. After all, with a village to govern, Minato had little time to spare. Naruto's eye, however, was drawn away from the roses towards a bush which grew several feet in height. The bush had long, slender branches that drooped across the paths within the garden and carried small, yet pretty, white flowers. "What's that one?" "Oh, that's a bush clover," Ino said offhandedly. "Those are supposed to be growing right now." In comparison, she found it much more interesting that her mother had succeeded in reviving the roses again than sustaining something as common as the bush clover. "We have one with pink and red too, over there," Ino pointed. "Tenten-nichan, come and look." Naruto smiled back at the surprised girl. "So he's chaos in the flesh, yet likes botany." She gazed at the boy who would call her a sister, with a look of utter disbelief. "Yeah, they're both troublesome." Two boys, one chubby and one lazy looking, approached Tenten. By the looks, they were around the same age as she was, although Tenten was a bit taller, so she suspected that she was the eldest. Nara Shikamaru, the black-haired lazy-looking boy, extended his hand. It was not with too much enthusiasm, but it seemed friendly enough. Tenten, then she accepted the gesture and shook his hand. "Akimichi," the chubby boy started. "Choji," he finished after taking a bite. Talking while eating a bag of chips was not as easy as it seemed. Or perhaps it was just because he didn't pause stuffing his mouth while he was talking. Tenten wished he had cleaned his hands before he greeted her. Now her hands were chips flavored too. "No clan or family name?" Shikamaru slightly frowned. No," Tenten laughed a bit awkwardly. "Kakashina-san and Naruto dragged me along." She blushed, embarrassed that she had nearly misspoke. Tenten scolded herself to keep her little fantasies private. Fathers, mothers, brothers, she had no right to say such things, she thought. "Oh, so you're living at Naruto's place?" Shikamaru sighed tiredly. It was not the sort of response that Tenten had been expecting. Why on earth would he find that particular fact problematic? "What? Just don't mention that to Ino, okay? She'll go crazy if she learns she has got competition." Shikamaru scowled and Choji looked rather frightened. "Look, our dads drag us along every time. Our dads and Ino's dad are friends, so we're supposed to cooperate as well. Choji is a good guy, he's no trouble, but Ino." "Thanks, Shikamaru," the Rot-un boy smiled at the compliment. Not many regarded him as a friend, which made Shikamaru's remark all the more special to him. "But Ino," the Nara continued. "She can be a pain when she's moody." Perhaps it's because her parents spoil her, or perhaps it is just an inborn form of troublesomeness. Perhaps it's because she is a girl. I don't know. He yawned and sat down on the grass. Choji quickly followed and Tenten decided to do that as well. It seemed better than following the turquoise-eyed Yamanaka, who only seemed to have eyes for all the flowers in the large garden and for Naruto. The way the girl kept positioning herself next to Naruto was a little weird, although Naruto seemed completely oblivious to it, Tenten observed. Man, ever since Ino found out that Naruto loves flowers she's gone completely nuts, Shikamaru sighed. Not sure how he can cope with it. It seems far too tiring to my liking. I don't think Naruto easily tires, Tenten deadpanned. If I learned one thing, it would be that no one is as hyperactive as he is. They'll join us when they grow tired of the flowers, Choji smiled. Seen anyone else, Shika? Nah, you know how this stuff goes. It's Ino's birthday, but considering how she's the heir it always becomes a clan affair. Do all the clans visit? Tenten blinked. Us 3 clans and the Aburam often visit, just like the Saratobi clan and the Namikaze family. The lazy boy looked up at the skies and saw the clouds drifting high. I saw a few Hyugas stalking about as well. Perhaps Hinata will join us as well. Hinata? Yeah, she's the heir of the Hyuga clan, Shikamaru explained. Can't say I ever properly spoke to her, though. She doesn't really seem to like talking. She's very friendly, just a bit shy, Choji clarified. And you gave up on talking to her too easily, Shika. I would have expected more kids in a birthday party like this, Tenten frowned. I always heard that these parties focus on kids rather than the grown-ups. Heard? Shikamaru remarked. Considering how she had lacked a family name, he had already guessed that she was an orphan. The question of she was living in the household of the Yondaime Hokage intrigued him, so he asked. Now you're the one being troublesome, Choji laughed heartily. He could see how the question bothered the girl, who had a bit of a depressed look, and Choji didn't like it when people were uncomfortable. At the same time, he saw the fun in Shikamaru being exactly the same thing which annoyed him most. No, it's alright, Tenten smiled weakly. I'm an orphan, and birthdays aren't really celebrated in the orphanages. The only important thing about your age is that you have the right to leave the orphanage when you hit 12. How did you end up in the household of Konoha's most powerful shinobi? Shikamaru may have been lazy, but he was also curious. At least, he was curious about anything he could learn without having to put too much effort into it. He was an intelligent boy for his age, and his father had often told him he needed a lot more knowledge if he wanted to be able to stand even a ghost of a chance against him and Shogi. Gathering the necessary information to gain that knowledge was troublesome, though. As Tenten was giving a brief explanation of how she met Naruto, as well as how she got accepted into the Namikaze household, omitting several things like why she fled the orphanage in the middle of night, Naruto was being dragged around by Ino. He really did believe her and agreed that there were some really beautiful flowers to be seen in the Yamanaka garden, but still I think the bush clover is more beautiful. He interrupted a lengthy monologue which Ino had given about some sort of oddly colored tulip. Perhaps these are more colorful, and the bush clover might be a bit plain in comparison, but I think that is only more beautiful due to that. It is more modest, Naruto said, with unusual eloquence for him. Plain? Ino frowned. It isn't plain, dummy. Kasen said that the branches represent the elegance which only women have, but she also said that it is a symbol of vigor. What? Vigor, energy, life, Ino summed up what the word meant, according to her. Kasen said that it is a symbol of life because it can produce young offshoots even from the oldest stalks. Oh, so they aren't as simple as they look. Sorry, Naruto scratched the back of his head, laughing a bit awkwardly. Still, I like that one the most. According to Tausen, it also symbolizes a blunt and candid love, Ino smirked, though not as subtle as she thought she did. He says I'm the embodiment of a bush clover. Didn't you say it represented elegance? Yeah, what of it? Ino narrowed her eyes. That had not been the answer she had been expecting from the boy. Naruto laughed uneasily, knowing he had to shut up. And fast. She seemed too impetuous to him to ever be represented by a flower which equaled elegance. He knew he would get in trouble if he said that out loud. He could see that in her turquoise-colored eyes. His awkwardness, however, only gave him more problems. She eyed him suspiciously, and Naruto frantically sought for something to distract the girl. Oh, hey Hinata-chan. He greeted his rescuer. Something behind the hedge eeped, but it was already too late for the shy Hyuga. Ino had taken the bait and noticed the dark blue-haired girl. With Ino being Ino, there was no escape for the shy Hyuga. Why are you hiding? Come out. Ino scurried after the hiding heiress. Stop hiding, Hinata. Hello, Hinata muttered, knowing that she had been caught anyway. Hi, Naruto smiled. So you like flowers too? Why yes. So, which do you like better, the roses or the bush clover? Ino urged. Hinata looked at Naruto and then at Ino, then she noticed the 3 other children near the building and well, Hinata had heard what Ino just said. She wanted to say that she liked the roses better, but it had seemed to her that the bush clover was also very important to what should I say? Told you that the bush clover was better, Naruto chuckled, increasing the weight of Hinata's ordeal. But the roses are far more special in this time of the year, countered. Doesn't make them prettier, does it? They don't need to, because wait, Hinata. Hinata. Hey, tried to shake the Hyuga, but she had passed out. Not able to come up with an answer and feeling the pressure to give one mounting, the poor girl's brain had short-circuited. Okay, that was weird. Naruto-kun, don't say something like that, it's rude. But it's true. Watching the children from the rooftop, Itachi had to struggle to resist the urge to smack himself in the face. Well, against his mask. I thought Sasuke was a busybody, but I take that back. Those two blondes will destroy the entire village when they grow up and keep acting like this, especially when the girl improves her flirting. Kushina-sama will get quite a few headaches if this develops as I think it will. Thankfully Naruto is still completely oblivious. This seems like quite the cozy little party. Itachi was surprised, as he had never seen the man coming. Even he, with his famous eyes, had been caught completely off guard. Drawing his tanto, Itachi rushed towards his ward, but the man was faster. Much faster. From up close, Itachi saw the man. He was fairly tall, with unruly and fiery red hair, even brighter than Kushina's. Wearing black pants and a long-sleeved shirt, only his white traveling cloak looked out of place for an assassin. The ginger man wore a white and smooth mask akin to that of an Anbu, although the mask lacked holes for his eyes and lacked a distinct pattern like all Anbu had. Relax, Uchiha-san. I'm only here to take little Naruto out for a walk. I cannot allow you to take him away. Which village do you serve? TSK, don't ask such foolish questions, boy. You can see that I do not wear a hit I-8, can't you? Oh, and don't bother attempting putting me under one of those nifty genjutsus of yours. Your dojutsu is a bit pointless against a blind man like me. The voice was deep and clearly amused. Itachi, however, was not amused. He shouted at the children, urging them to get inside and warn the adults. Why hasn't anyone else shown up yet? Itachi couldn't shake off the thought that this was some kind of elaborate trap. Snatching the son of the Yondaime away while an Uchiha was supposed to protect the boy, it would make the position of the clan all the more desperate. Was this a setup? Itachi knew that he couldn't allow it to happen, it would be a disaster for his clan. Yet, blind or not, the masked man effortlessly caught Itachi's sword. Realizing that he was outmatched both in speed and reach, Itachi switched to ninjutsu. However, randomly spitting fireballs at the man was a no-go, considering how the unconscious Hyuga heiress lay nearby. Just quit this, I don't want to get bored, the masked man lazily threw the Uchiha prodigy aside. His strength is unreal. And I can't even see him using that much chakra, how is it possible for a man to have this much physical power? But regardless of his growing anxiety, Itachi leapt back and rushed through the hand seal. Itachi was not the type of person who would boast about his prowess, but he did accept the fact that he was unusually fast when it came to forming seals. In fact, Itachi guessed he was about as fast as his father in this regard, even though Fugaku was still easily more powerful than the 10-year-old in practically every other aspect. Still, this unknown assailant closed in before Itachi had even finished his fifth seal. A fist connected harshly to Itachi's chest, sending him crashing into the wall of the Yamanaka house. Immediately, Shinobi rushed outside. Kushina, in spite of her handicap, quickly followed. But they were too late. The man already lifted Naruto from the ground. The children had been too stunned to react. It had all happened so quickly, the man and Itachi had moved so fast. Kushina could do little more than helplessly watch the man disappear with a crying Naruto under his arm. Naruto. She stood there, frozen, panicked. Then, she grabbed the nearest Yamanaka by the collar, commanding him to warn her husband. Naruto was kidnapped, this was a declaration of war. But from whom? Had Iwa finally gathered the courage to set foot outside their borders again? Or was it another brave attempt from Kumagakure to steal children? Oh, how she cursed her own weakness. Her helplessness. But she had to leave it up to Minato. Perhaps her husband had already noticed Naruto's distress. Perhaps one of Kakashi's men or women had noticed the kidnapper. But Kushina had to remain strong. Tenten was in panic, as were the other children. For some reason, the Hyuga heiress was unconscious on the ground, while the Yamanaka heiress stood near the girl, crying her eyes out. The parents and guards who had not rushed after the kidnapper quickly tended to the children. Kushina knew she had to be there for Tenten. The red-haired kidnapper, meanwhile, did not care. As far as he was concerned, they could send anyone they wanted after him. It wouldn't matter to his plan. No, all he wanted was for little Naruto to panic, to get angry, to tap into the massive chakra of the Kyuubi. That was all the man with the pale white mask wanted to see, well, figuratively at least, considering how he couldn't see. It took him only a few minutes before he landed in a clearing outside Konohagakure. Yo, you caught him, Tausen. A little red-haired girl was waiting for the man. Her dark brown eyes filled with curiosity. Naruto was a bit younger than she was, but the girl couldn't imagine that she had ever cried like him. Is that was really the kid you wanted to see? You probably took the wrong one. Do you think that I would make such a mistake? The masked man chuckled. Now, Naruto-kun, let us see that power of yours. Vaccinations. It was 1 week after his 4th birthday party when Minato warned him. They were coming for him with needles, the pointy things which the little boy hated in that white bad-smelling building filled with nurse people. Naruto didn't like nurse people, but nurse people with pointy needles were the worst kind. That vaccination against possible diseases, Minato explained patiently. Naruto didn't see the point of sending diseases on vacation, but it was better than getting sick. But hell, he'd never been sick anyway, so why the needles? Needles hurt, and the nurse people seemed to enjoy hurting him. Obviously, Kushina and Minato knew about this. So they hired the one medic whom Naruto would obey, but did not associate with hospitals. Tsunade. Achan. He jumped into her arms, cheering that she was visiting again. Brat, how many times do I have to tell you that it is rude to call me a granny? Tsunade gently bopped the boy on his head. Call me Bachan or Nichan, but not Bachan. But you're as old as Gamage-Isen. You refer to Jiraiya as an uncle, yet me as a granny. Naruto gave her a big toothy grin when she sighed in exasperation. But you're the best Bachan in the whole world. Snickering from a distance, Shizune saw how her teacher melted at the boy's words, as usual. She really is unable to resist Naruto-kun's charms. When will she ever learn? Although Tsunade had assured her younger apprentice that she'd be able to handle Naruto on her own, Shizune had decided to remain vigilant. As unpredictable as Tsunade was, Naruto was starting to become even worse, as was soon demonstrated. Holding him by his tiny hand, with him taking 2 or 3 steps to her one, Tsunade and Naruto took a seemingly innocent stroll through the village. Even from the rooftops, Shizune could hear her nephew figure talk on and on about the craziest variety of things. Ramen was a recurring theme, naturally. Knowing him since he was born, Shizune was well aware that the boy's world revolved around 3 things. His mother, his father, and his ramen. The threat of depriving him from his ramen was one of the best ways to keep the hyperactive child in their control. Sadly, to execute such a threat, one had to possess a firmness which Tsunade and Minato did not possess at all. The big, innocent, sky-blue eyes always undermined their determination, and if the infamous puppy eyes didn't work, the whiskers on his chubby cheeks would. At times, Shizune swore that the boy knew exactly what to do to get Tsunade wrapped around his little finger. Today that couldn't happen. As said, they wanted him to go to the hospital. With his Bachan near, the boy had forgotten all about it until the hospital sign appeared at the end of the street. The speed at which he then moved his tiny little legs impressed Shizune, and the timing was impeccable, as always. With Tsunade being caught by surprise, little Naruto would have gotten away among the masses on the street if not for Shizune's interference. Thank you, Shizune. I told you to keep an eye on Naruto-kun, Tsunade-sama. How could I know that I don't want to go to Hapita. I don't wanna. The boy whined, but after a stern look from Shizune, Tsunade lifted the boy off his feet and carried him towards the hospital. Caught between 2 fires, Tsunade knew there was no way to keep both of her precious people satisfied, so she chose the most sensible option. Calm down, Naruto-chan. Henge. She's using Henge no Jutsu. Where did you learn about that? Shizune frowned. Although that wasn't what worried Tsunade. Minato and Kushina never let their boy go without some sort of visible or invisible guard, and the outcry made the Anbu squad that was surrounding them freeze. Kid, shut up, or they'll get the wrong idea of this. If you act properly I'll treat you to raw kidnappers. He exclaimed. Men, yes, now the Anbu had popped up, with their previous confusion replaced by the determination to rescue their hero's son. But between the boy's action and the Anbu's rude attempt at stopping her, Tsunade's short fuse had been lit. With a pained groan, Shizune watched her teacher bash the closest Anbu away. The flying Anbu was a signal for the others to call in reinforcements. Naruto saw none of it. He had used the opportunity to slip away from Tsunade. Within minutes, he hopped on his favorite seat at his favorite eating establishment. 2 miso please, Ajasan. He chirped happily, completely oblivious to the chaos which he had just created. It wasn't long, as he had not even finished his first bowl, when a very annoyed woman came stamping towards him. Namikaze Naruto, do you have any idea of what you— Achan? I ordered miso ramen for you too. Oh? While the mayhem continued in the background, mother and son were happily eating their ramen. Poor Shizune had made a rather huge error in her observations. It wasn't just Minato who was weak against Naruto, but Kushina she was perhaps even worse. Or was it the ramen that had swayed her so easily? Now, Naruto-kun, let us see that power of yours, the masked man chuckled. Lem go. I want to see my Ka-chan. Naruto twisted and turned, but not matter how hard he wriggled, the masked man did not budge an inch. His tiny body was powerless compared to the man's strength. Come on kid, don't be such a bore, the man grunted. Obviously, the red-haired man did not have much patience. Then again, if it possessed any of that, he would never have used such crude methods to snatch Naruto away from Konoha. Let him go. Let him go. The boy sensed the ominous aura surrounding the man. Something was terribly wrong. Where was his father? Where was his mommy? Shut up. The man slapped Naruto against his cheek. Show me the power of the Kyuubi. I want my Ka-chan, Naruto wailed. Ka-chan. Tu-chan. Tenten Nichan. Yugao Nichan. Geez, this kid really is a super wuss, isn't he? The little girl frowned. Just like her Tusan, she possessed red hair, a distinct color which was not often seen these days, although hers was more pinkish than the truly red hair of her father. Like you were any better when I took you from your home, the man chuckled behind his solid white mask. Claiming to be blind, the man didn't even have holes in his mask, yet somehow he navigated perfectly through the village and the surrounding forest. But neither Naruto nor the girl would understand him if he were to explain this by saying that he was a censor. I was never such a wimp, the girl scowled. And I chose for that, remember? I've never been that weak. Oh yes you were. The man lifted Naruto up and started shaking him up and down. Come on brat, what is taking you so long to get pissed at me, become mad enough to tap into that power? Naruto struggled, cried, shouted, and screamed, but he was powerless. And yet, he did not succumb. You're still expecting your dad to arrive here, aren't you? The man began to laugh. Look at that nifty little scroll, kid, he pointed. Can you see it glow? It distorts any seal the Yondaime put on you, so why don't you give up those idle hopes? Show me the power of the Kyuubi, or I'm going to gut you like a fish, you little fish cake. The child was desperate and began crying louder and louder until his voice stopped. You go and hide, the man lazily gestured to the girl. He dropped the child he had been holding up and when the boy hit the ground, the man noticed it. He saw it. Faster than most eyes could ever hope to follow, he lashed out. His fingers pressing against Naruto's stomach. Even though the clothing hid it, the seal which held the Kyuubi trap became visible. Naruto had snapped and in his rage he had subconsciously tried to tap into the fox's power. It was a futile effort considering how young and weak the child was. He could not even control the tiniest splinter of monster's massive chakra. But the boy opening the door for even a millimeter was all the man needed for the sake of his mission. They took Naruto-chan. Where is Tenten-chan? Minato looked at his wife. He had arrived as quickly as possible, but still who on earth could have snatched Naruto away in clear daylight? Why was the marker on Naruto not working? With that marker, Minato could use his Hiraishin no Jutsu to instantly travel to where Naruto was, but something was blocking the signal. I left her in Yugao's care, Inoichi vowed that he'll take Itachi to the hospital. Itachi? What happened? He tried to save Naruto-chan. Itachi tried to stop him, but got hit rather hard, Kushina scowled. From the looks of it he broke a few ribs. It happened so fast it was a jonin at least, and a very skilled one at that. I don't know who he was or from which village he came, but why are you here, why didn't you go to? You have that connection to Naruto-chan. The marker doesn't work and my Anbu are in complete disarray. You are our best chance at finding Naruto, Minato urged. For a moment, Kushina just looked at her husband, stunned. West, she muttered. Hold it. I am not letting you go out there on your own. Kushina-chan, you know you can't. I can't fight, I know that, Kushina snapped, her hair flailing wildly. But I sure as hell can locate our son better than you. So stop arguing, you carry me. Just like old times, Minato, despite everything, despite his worries, smiled weakly. He recalled the night he had carried a girl back to Konoha, a girl who later came to be the love of his life. Yo. You. The growl made the entire environment tremble. You dare to show your face here, come closer so that I can kill you. TSK, that's no way to speak to your friend now, is it? The masked man had appeared in Naruto's inner world. Friend? The giant fox howled at the puny man in front of him. You dare call yourself my friend? You promised me freedom. Well, if it hadn't been for me, you probably would have spent all this time in some kind of damp sewer. I bet this environment is more pleasant to you. Less cramped, he waved around with his arms. While there were still massive prison bars between him and the creature, the inside of the prison was everything but a damp sewer. It mostly resembled a huge plain trapped between mountains. The fox was definitely gigantic when measured by human standards, but the trees of the forest on the left end of the valley were equally massive in size. With a calm river splitting the plain, the place seemed rather tranquil. All the mountains made sure the Kyuubi could not escape, only the huge bars that separated the fox from all those who entered Naruto's mindscape still gave the area a prison feel. I do admit it is different from being chained and nailed to a cross, the Kyuubi grunted. But this was not what we agreed. You promised that I could move in the outside world as well. I had expected you to be a little smarter, the man sighed. Seriously, how was I supposed to free a part of you while the kid was incapable of sustaining even the smallest amounts of your chakra? I told you that night that you'd have to be patient. Baka. The nine-tailed fox grit its teeth but otherwise refrained from reacting to the taunt. Until it realized what the man just said. Are you saying the kid can now sustain it? What kind of trick did you pull on the child? The man demanded. I could see it. The brat somehow displaced small amounts of your chakra to his bones. I know that you are impatient, but if you have done anything to harm the boy I am going to make you pay. I will not keep my end of the agreement if you have already broken it. Why are you so damn protective when it concerns the brat? The fox scoffed. You want him to be safe and you want him to become capable of defending himself. Which of the two do you want? Both, and you damn well know it. But if that is your answer, you leave me no choice but to. Human. What do you think I did, short-sighted fool? The ground shook as a massive paw landed on it. The masked man, however, was not in the least worried. The Bidjuu would not be capable of harming him, not with these bars between them. And even if they weren't there, the man figured that the most powerful of the Bidjuu would still bow to his will. After all, it wasn't like his interest in the creature was merely a random occurrence. I gave him the chance to improve himself, the fox growled. The abilities which the old man passed on to his youngest kid did not just go to the clan which boasted to be his direct descendants. You know that the Senju and Uzumaki were related. So? The man was scarcely interested. To him, the deal would be off the moment the Kyuubi hurt the boy. What I saw was no Mokuton, fox. Fool. Who do you think the old man was? The Rakuto Sennin was the one who taught you puny and ungrateful little rats how to manipulate chakra. He was the origin of all your hairless monkey's precious abilities. All your precious bloodlines are either derived from his blood or created by him. As far as I remember, the ability to manipulate one's skeleton was an ability that belonged to the Kagaya clan. Ugh, those wretched little pests have the same ability, yes. But what do you think about me? If I so wish, I could create new bones from my mere chakra. Sure, it would be easier using the existing bones, but I don't exactly need to. You can create bones from chakra alone. Well, it isn't as simple as that. Sure, any Bidjuu can create a body from scratch, but that's a long and tedious process. To create bones quickly, all I need is some flesh or bone as base material, and I can expand it into any form I wish. Ha! How did you think I escaped the fools who attempted to seal me within them? I deconstructed their bodies, used their tissue as little more than a catalyst for my inevitable return. I could not be trapped. Until the first of your accursed Uzumaki kin sealed me, that is, the creature growled at the red-haired man. So did you give Naruto the Shikatsunyaku Kekkei Genkai or not? It could not be seen due to the mask that he wore even in this realm, but it was audible in his voice that the man was frowning in mild confusion. Then again, he knew he would bear part of the responsibility. After all, he had affected the sealing, and one never knew the possible side effects of foreign chakra settling in a body like that. But he didn't have well, now that he thought about it. He did know a thing or two which his chakra might have caused. TSK, humans and their petty attachments to names. If that name makes you happy, then so be it. Like I said, that bloodline has likely been passed on to the kid, just like any other of the old man's bloodlines, even if the necessary genes were dormant until I changed a thing or two. I don't care about the details. You and that blonde bastard want the kid to be strong, so I made him strong. He's still developing his chakra coils properly, so altering a few things here or there is as easy as gobbling up a herd of cows. But with control over his skeleton, he should have a strong enough defense to resist a hit or two, even from someone like you. So that is why you acted without even asking, the man nodded. I see, yes, it was the best path. Changing the boy physically at later stages would likely raise more problems. Though I fear that the boy might not like you for changing him, considering how it isn't exactly the best looking of abilities, he chuckled softly. Then again, you two will probably have a rather chaotic bond anyway. I take it you are going to set me free. The Kyuubi was impatient. Being imprisoned for most of this last century, he wanted to get out and stretch his legs. Only a part, only what he can sustain, the man warned. So don't expect too much, Kurama. Don't you utter that name, the fox hissed. I still haven't given you the right to do that, nitpicker. Feeble meatbag. A flash of fire, and the whole realm was engulfed in a bright light. Even the mightiest of the Bidjuu had to close his eyes, unable to endure the blinding brightness the man created on his exit. And then he felt a pull. Kurama smirked and happily accepted. Freedom. For the first time after all these wretched years within those filthy hairless apes, I can move freely. The mighty fox roared in laughter. It is too bad I accepted that deal, or I would have burned that entire cursed village. Kurama. Instead, I will destroy all the other humans. Ha. I will make them pay for what they did to me and my kind. I will gobble them all up. I'll set those other 7 weaklings free and leave Shukaku locked in the most feeble meatbag I can find. I will never allow them to. Kurama. The fox tried to adjust to the bright midday skies and as he blinked, he saw a pair of legs. Massive legs, clad in black trousers. Looking up, he saw the same white mask of the man who had freed him. How did he get this gigantic? Wait, the trees were enormous too. The brat, cheeks still covered with tears and his big blue eyes staring at him with confusion, was a giant. Even the red-haired girl, who spied on him from behind it wasn't that they were all massive, it was that no, that would be too cruel. That couldn't but it was. Wide. I tried to warn ya, remember? The masked man said cautiously. Or was it because he was stifling his laughter? Kurama couldn't tell with that annoying mask on the man's face. I could only draw out a little, and your size kinda reflects the amount I could take out. You can't be serious. What is this mockery? Yo, kid. Meet Ku-chan, the man was now clearly laughing behind that mask of his. Ku-chan. The tiny fox screeched. You wretched human, come here and I'll nibble on my pinky toe. The man fell down, unable to control himself any longer. Kurama wanted to throw himself at the meatbag, tear his throat apart in order to punish him for this insult. But instead, he lost contact with the ground and flew upwards. Ku-chan. Little Naruto did not understand what was going on, but the entire atmosphere had changed the instant the tiny nine-tailed fox had popped up in an orange flash of light. Gone was the chilling sensation of fear and danger, as it was replaced by unbridled hilarity. Why had he even been afraid of the laughing man? Naruto didn't know. But the typical attention span of a 4-year-old, Naruto instead focused on the strange little talking animal, and it just looked so cuddly and cute, with its dense orange fur and those adorable little fluffy tails, that he couldn't resist himself. The mighty Kyuubi, a creature able to crumble mountains with a mere swing of its tails, which could cause tsunamis with his mighty roar, was reduced to this. Oh, the shame, the embarrassment he felt. Never in all of eternity would he forgive that man, being hugged like a little pet rabbit. Even his screams were inaudible due to the boy's hug. This was the scene Minato and Kushina saw when they leapt down from the trees. Naruto, unharmed, holding a little fox cub which had 9 little fluffy tails. And a man cloaked in white, with a blank mask, howling in laughter. Ha-chan. The little blonde boy jumped towards his mum after Minato had let her down. And Naruto dropped Ku-chan, which caused an indignant growl. While Minato would never say it out loud, Kushina had been easier to carry when they were both younger. But Konoha no Kairoi Senko or not, Minato knew better than to make such a remark. The way Naruto ignored him in favor of Kushina was well, it made sense. After all, Naruto spent most time with his mother, while Minato was busy doing his duty as the Hokage. And the strange understanding which mother and son had was also something beyond him. Still, Minato was glad to see that his son was healthy, though obviously shaken. Yo. The masked man put up his hand as a greeting. Minato frowned when he heard the voice, though. Between that and the red hair, but how could he have been here on this short notice? Jiraiya-sensei said that you were near Kiri, Minato sputtered. How did I did snatch Naruto away like that? The kid needed to tap into Ku-chan's chakra for me to succeed, so he needed to panic a bit, the masked man chuckled sheepishly. If you ever call me that again, I'm going to tear your organs out. The tiny fox growled. The deep voice combined with his chibi body only served to make the situation even more hilarious. Now make me bigger, you human scum. I told ya, Baka-fox, I can't. Naruto can't deal with a bigger strain. So, it's in your best interest to make the kid strong, understand? This is extortion. Like you're so innocent, Kyuubi, the man retorted. Even when you're enraged you look so adorable. You mean to say that this little thing is it? Kushina was petting Naruto at the same as she was talking. Typical, the fox scoffed. Just refer to me as a thing. You don't want to be called by your name either, Kurama, the masked man remarked. So what else is she supposed to call you? Felix. Pachi. Bello. I'm not a freaking dog, you lowlife. Well, I like Ku-chan better, what do you think, kiddo? Curiously, the blonde boy looked up to the red-haired man. Well, half hidden behind his mother, the boy drew some courage from her presence and his father's. His father was the strongest shinobi in the world, so he was safe now, wasn't he? Ku-chan is better than Pachi. Ugh, bothersome humans. Just wait until I have my usual size. And you'll be the first one I'll eat, he growled at the masked man. Cannibalism is wrong, you know, was the snickered answer he got in return. Ignoring how incredibly crazy the situation is, what are you doing here? Minato spoke up again. Do you think I'd leave a seal without having a way to keep informed? We struck a deal with Ku-chan, and I intended to keep it. You two just hold on to your end of the deal and make sure the kid grows strong. From what I gather, Ku-chan did quite. Stop calling me that, you insolent meatbag. Ku-chan did quite a good job when it comes to getting the boy stronger, the masked man continued, ignoring the enraged little fox. Naruto-chan will need some good training at controlling that power. Ah-chan, why is the mean masked man acting so nice all of a sudden? The blue-eyed boy looked up to his mum for answers. He was really lost now, what the hell was going on? Oi, Yaya-chan, you still too stubborn to stay here? The man ignored the confused child in favor of the little reet behind them. Like hell I'm getting left behind, the girl protested. I'm going. You promised me. I did, so calm down. Well then, it was a pleasure as always, he bowed to the family. Till next time, Yandame-sama, Kushina-sama. You of all people should know better than to continue with these formalities, Kushina scowled. But don't stay away for too long this time. We family is meant to stay together. And if I may ask, is she I mean, you in these years, did you? Nope, she's not mine, not by blood at least. Although in every other aspect of the word I do consider her my daughter. And she's no full-blood Uzumaki either. I suspect a quarter, the man shrugged. But that doesn't matter to me. Whether as Emoto or Musume, I promise to take care of her, right? Right, the girl nodded. Minato had to laugh when he saw the fierce look on the girl's face. She definitely looked a lot like Kushina, even though her hair was a few shades lighter. Are you sure you don't want to stay for dinner? Kushina tried. I can always make some ramen. Nah, after the ruckus I created it would probably be best if did you say ramen. Is every Uzumaki the same? Minato groaned. I'll notify Kakashi that the situation is solved. Fugaku won't be happy hearing that his son was. Oh right, the kid whom I gave that little punching present, the man chuckled. He'll be fine in a few days. Not like how he was before, but he'll do just fine. I'll check up on him in return for the ramen. You know I really should make a law on not randomly putting seals on people. You'd be the first one arrested, with the markers of your Haration everywhere. You hungry, Yaya-chan? Ramen? Both kids chorused. And perhaps I should catch a mouse as well. It would make a fine meal for Kuchan. The Kyuubi wasn't sure whether he should be thankful that he could finally set foot in the outside world, or if he should regret this. Though a separate body, the giant fox within Naruto was still in control over the little body. The dissimilarity in size was a bit nauseating, but being made fun of was far and far worse. He'd really want to throw a tantrum, but knowing that it would only embarrass him even further, he controlled himself. Until the remark on the mouse reached his tiny ears. Still in disbelief, Minato and Kushina shared a glance of confusion, not comprehending how the Bijuu got out or why it was so tiny, and worst of all, why the man was taunting the fox like this. The kids didn't worry about it, though. They laughed and tried to get to the tiny fox before said fox would succeed in biting the masked man's ankles. How do you even eat? Yeah, well keeping that mask on, it's freaky, Tenten agreed with her blonde friend and sort of brother. Seriously, this had been an extremely weird day. First that party where she had felt completely out of place, and then the same man who was dining with them had literally crashed the party. Why on earth was the man even here? She could see Naruto was equally confused. But where she remained a bit suspicious of everyone, especially after her run-in with Kurosawa, Naruto seemed to trust everyone if his parents gave the thumbs up. That said, why would the Hokage himself talk so familiarly with the man who had just kidnapped his son? Are you family? We've got red hair, don't we? There was Tenten's problem number 2. An overly direct and utterly tactless red-haired girl of about her age. Though, the girl seemed a bit short in comparison to her behavior, so Tenten suspected she could be a year older than she was. Point is, this behatted little girl showed absolutely no respect to anyone here. Yaya-chan, behave yourself, even the masked man noted it. This is the household of the Yandame Hokage, remember? Yeah, like I'd listen to the idiot who kidnapped the man's son, the girl retorted. If anyone doesn't know respect it would be you, Tusan. Behave or no ramen, the man shrugged. For you, at least. I'd just make you watch me eat ramen again. Yeah, Tusan. One yeah would suffice, Yaya-chan. For some reasons beyond Tenten's understanding, both Minato and Kushina were very amused by the exchange. That said, it was fairly commonly known that the Uzumaki clan had been rather chaotic would be a good word to describe them. While geniuses at Fuinjutsu, the clan had never been as warlike as all the others. Instead, the Uzumaki had isolated themselves on their own island, fortifying their positions with an insurmountable defensive barriers and seals, living in peace and prosperity. Unlike all the other clans, who had survived as little more than mercenary bands, the Uzumaki never had been forced to adopt a militaristic society. The rigid order and absolute authority which other shinobi had come to accept as normal had been largely ignored by the Uzumaki. They didn't care about formalities. And considering the behavior of these 4 Uzumaki, this was something hereditary, as if even their genetic code had been written according to their old ways of life. But unlike her elders, Tenten did not know any of this. She was raised in an environment where not paying attention to formalities resulted in punishment, so a situation like this was rather alien to her. The trait of the Uzumaki clan is our red hair, Tenten-chan, Kushina explained. And while our clan was destroyed, there are still some survivors. Why don't you have a name? Tenten glared at the masked man, not very convinced he was actually good. She had seen him smash away Naruto's Anbu guard, like the Uchiha boy had meant nothing. Nah, names don't really matter, the man shook his head in denial. Well, he shook his mask, Tenten considered. But believe me that you could have seen men who are a lot worse than me who wear masks. You can say that again, Kushina muttered. I know, Naruto suddenly bounced with enthusiasm. You're the mister who saved Two-chan and Ka-chan. And me. Well, there was a certain fox trashing around at the time and he was a bit hard to ignore. But yes, I'm the same guy. And I'm glad I was there, just in time to save my clan members, the masked man nodded. Yeah, I'm still in a state of disbelief to find family amidst that chaos. But why do you wear a mask? Only the evil man wore a mask, right? The man started to laugh when he saw Naruto's pout. Oh yes, he definitely wore a mask. But that doesn't mean that all people with masks are evil, right? Take for instance your lovely Nico-chan over there, he pointed at Yugao, who had thought she had hidden herself quite well, but apparently not. Is she evil, Naruto? Yugao-nichan isn't evil. Naruto exclaimed in the typical childish how dare you suggest such a thing tone. The masked man tapped at his mask, focusing the boy's attention on the object again. I'm wearing this thing because I lost my eyes, kiddo. But you. It doesn't mean he is blind, Naruto-chan, Minato ruffled with a hand through Naruto's spiky hair. He is an exceptional sensor, so he can see even without eyes. Really? Naruto was definitely awed. But the man, in spite of the boy's disbelief, nodded. Wow, that's so cool. Naruto didn't know what sensor meant, but seeing without eyes sounded cool enough. In his ramen-obsessed mind, it reminded him of shio or shoyu, flavor types of ramen, so it couldn't be bad. I'd rather still have my eyes, the man remarked dryly. So, I'd suggest you kids listen well to your parents and train hard. If you don't, you'd end up like me. And no pair of goggles in the world is going to help you if you lost your eyes. You're just staying for the night to annoy me, aren't you? The little fox was lazing around in the garden while the masked man sat down near him. This must be hilarious to you, but don't think I'll ever forget this. The man took off his mask and sighed. I told you, Kurama. This is the best I could do. Seriously, I thought you'd have to wait until the boy would turn 6. You're lucky he developed his chakra coil so early. Without the mask on him, Kurama got a better view of the man. You haven't improved since I last saw you. I guess, the man mumbled, agreeing with the understatement. His face was littered with black scars and his eyes or where his eyes should have been. There were only empty sockets, not eyes. I wasted quite a bit of power, the Sanbi certainly didn't make things easier for me. The Sobu certainly doesn't like being hunted, Kurama chuckled. I take it he has already driven his Jinchuriki nuts. Only the flesh of Yugura is left, but his mind is broken, the scarred man said sadly. In spite of his noble intentions, I think Isobu managed to overwhelm him. Isobu gave Yugura the illusion that they were cooperating and then took him down when he saw his chance. The annoying part is that I can't seal him away while he is still hiding in his Jinchuriki. But the things he's doing in Kiri. Like I said, he doesn't like being hunted. He uses Yugura to target every bloodline within Mizu no Kuni. No, Kurama sighed. He is removing every potential threat to himself. In spite of his size, Isobu has always been insecure. Why do you think he's hiding in that shell of his? And like all of us, he prefers to be left alone. If you ask me, those humans ask for it, they keep pushing us, but never consider how we feel. The man nodded and remained silent for a while, just enjoying the quiet evening. The kids were asleep, Kushina was resting on the couch, and Minato and Yugao were doing the dishes. For a moment, the man felt at peace. As things were now, he was almost tempted to stay longer, rather than to go back to Kurigakure. But he couldn't let the people of Mizu suffer under the tyranny of Yugura. He had to go back, gather reinforcements, and try again when he was fully recovered. But for now, he just wanted to forget about all those tiresome things. Train the boy well, Kurama, he eventually broke the silence. You know as well as I do that it was not the real Madara that night. The Kyuubi huffed in response, but couldn't really deny it either. Sure, if the man had really been crippled after the battle against Hashirama, the Shodaime Hokage, then the level of power could have been right. But the eyes, they hadn't been the right eyes. You're still thinking it was him who targeted Yuzushio? Yeah. Just think about it, he's known for manipulating Biju, so who would he target first? The seal masters of Yuzushi Agakure would have been the greatest threat to his schemes. You can bet that I'm sure it was him. Soon, it will be 5 years ago since that night. Tell me, Kyuubi, do you think that masked Uchiha randomly targeted you? Humans don't last that long, Kurama hesitated. He's dead. Yeah, but what legacy did he leave behind? Don't you think it is wise to tell them about it? Beyond Aim and Kushina. I'll tell them when it is the right time. They already have enough suspicions. Hell, even the old man and the perverted sage keep bugging me whenever I'm near. No, I'll wait. I'll tell them when all the pieces are in place or when the situation becomes too threatening, the man mused. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure I can entirely trust this village. There are plenty of vile humans here, yes, Kurama agreed. I can weed them out, it would be my pleasure. You'd love to kill a few people, I know, the man laughed gently. But don't let yourself be controlled by your grudges and hatred, it is wrong. Besides, it would affect the child too. No, I'll deal with that issue in due time. I've always been curious as to why Konoha never came to the aid of Yuzashio. Just say the word and I'll gobble them all up. You've certainly become a lot more cheerful after the hump of raw meat Kushina gave you, the man's scarred face contorted in a grin. With his empty eye sockets and multitude of scars, it was one of the scariest human expressions Kurama had ever seen. After all those years you don't know how great it felt to actually eat something real again, the fox muttered contently. You did what to her? A light blonde woman screeched. Hysen-sama, you can't be, this isn't true. Not her daughter, the red-haired man on her side groaned. His dark eyes squeezed shut in a futile attempt to hold back his tears. Although in this hospital room, none would have blamed him for breaking down. Hysen looked at the married couple. His short, smooth hair was graying all on the outside, with just the hair on the top of his head still having its original bright brown color. He wore a black Tokigaku hit I-8 around his forehead and his hair hanging over the left and right sides of it. He also had small black-colored eyes and a small brown goatee. Hysen was no ordinary shinobi, however. He was the head of the village hidden by a waterfall. Tokigaku. You know why it had to happen. It pained Hysen, but this had been the best option. He honestly could not say whether it was fortunate or unfortunate that his own son Shibuki had proven to be incompatible. His honor demanded of Hysen to first sacrifice his own before sacrificing the children of others, but it had turned out to be unavoidable. But 3 years ago, the balding father sputtered. This wasn't supposed to happen. Like all children born to loyal families of Tokigaku, your daughter was tested to see if she would be compatible, Hysen sighed. I am sorry, but with her predecessor failing to contain the monster, we had no other option. We had to act quickly. Aoi, you left your brother to watch over her, well you two went to Hai no Kuni, he was her legal representative at the moment. And he agreed, the mother, the aforementioned Aoi, wailed. That stupid drunk agreed, our daughter. My baby. She survived, Hysen frowned. She may have been in a coma for the past few days, but it takes time for someone to adjust to such a. You want to tell us that this thing, Aoi pointed furiously at the sleeping girl, was my daughter. Indeed, the daughter of the Harada family had undergone some changes. Her light blonde hair had changed to mint green, and it could be seen when her eyes fluttered as she slept in the hospital bed that her blue eyes seemed to have changed to a bright orange color. But Hysen knew this was not the change that bothered the parents most. This is still Harada Fu, even though she received the heavy duty of becoming Tokigaku's Jinchuriki, he grunted. That thing is not our daughter, Aoi repeated harshly. Our daughter died the moment you put that demon in her. You can see how that thing took over her body. Her soul has passed on, and that demon only controls her body. That is not a Harada. That is not my little Fu. Surely, you don't intend to cast her out. The moment you made her a Jinchuriki, that child ceased to be a Harada, the balding man agreed with his wife. We will mourn our loss, Hysen-sama. But I am afraid this sacrifice it is too much. Too cruel. I ask you to reconsider, Hysen urged. When she wakes up, you will see that Fu is still. We will see nothing, Aoi cut him off. We shall return to Ta no Kuni and continue building up the trade line for the sake of Tokigaku. I will not remain in a village that murdered our daughter. The pair stomped away before the shocked Hysen could say another thing. Yes, he had expected that the parents of this little girl would be distraught by the chain of events. But the Jinchuriki had suddenly lost control. The Bijuu, the Nanabi, had nearly broken free. The young man who was the previous Jinchuriki had always seemed troubled. He had been sickly, as if the chakra was poisoning his body. But the sudden deterioration of the seal had caught Hysen completely by surprise. In a matter of hours after the young man had collapsed, the council of Tokigaku had made its decision. A replacement had to be found immediately and the Bijuu had to be transferred before the unconscious man died and they lost control over the Nanabi. While everyone hated and neglected the Jinchuriki and a large part of the population would even rather see a Jinchuriki dead than alive, the council was also well aware of the value a Jinchuriki could have. As a weapon of last resort, a Jinchuriki could be a powerful weapon, capable of wiping out entire armies if spurred to lose control at the right moment. And in the unlikely chance that a Jinchuriki gained some measure of control over the demon's chakra, it would create an extremely powerful shinobi as well. Short-sighted fools, Hysen scowled. Whatever was sealed within the girl, she is still the same person. I cannot let her retain her family name if her parents are against it, but she will remain Fu. Fu of Tokigaku. She'll be one of my finest soldiers if she grows up and is able to endure the monster's chakra. The cold and logical part of his mind told Hysen that the decision of Aoi and her husband wasn't even that bad. With no one else in his way, Hysen could ensure that Fu would feel absolute loyalty towards him. Well, I can't take her in, either. I can't put her too close to Shibuki. He is only 12 and would not understand. But I will be the one who provides her with money and makes sure she remains well fed and clothed. Yes, that should be enough. Though, I think it works better if she first knows some despair. She'd see me as her savior once I approach her. This morning had been weird. Extremely weird. Since the moment Fu had woken up, people had treated her oddly. The nurses had barely said a word, glaring at her, just like her mother had done when she had fallen into the mud that one day. As if she was filthy and smelly. No, today was worse than how Aoi had looked that day. When the doctor had come to her, he had talked to her with an expression which she couldn't describe as anything but outright disgust. But why? What did she do? Why was she even in the hospital in the first place? Fu didn't know. It saddened her. The last thing she remembered was that an important-looking, mostly gray-haired man had talked to her. It was about a duty only she could do. Fu wasn't sure if the man had told the truth, though. The way people looked at her now was this because of her so-called honorable duty. She definitely remembered the gray-haired man saying that it was honorable. She had left the gigantic-seeming hospital building. Now the 5-year-old girl hurried through the village, frightened and unsure. Truthfully, Tokigakure was not particularly big and neither were the buildings, which made the hospital seem all the more terrifying to her. The only thing that was truly huge was the giant tree in the center of the village. In addition, considering how the village wasn't that big, people tended to know each other reasonably well, and Fu had never had any issues. Her parents were well-respected traders, not particularly influential as they were not shinobi, but they were not part of the common rabble either. Her father had owned nothing, not even a name, and had no remarkable past. But her mother was related to one of the founders of Taki, one who was killed by a thief who stole one of Taki's greatest secrets. So they had carried some respect, the respect befitting the Harada name, and yet, for some reason, all the people that Fu now encountered looked at her like she was filthy. What was wrong? What had she done? Had she failed in the unspecified duty that was given to her? She ran past a shop and a glance from the corner of her eyes made her stop. "What eye is that me?" she exclaimed, looking into the mirror. Orange eyes were staring at her and her hair it was mint green. The little girl barely recognized herself. She still had the same shape and the darkish tone of her skin was also still the same, but her eyes and hair only the fact that her mirror image made the exact same moves as she did had convinced the girl that her reflection was truly her. But she had been standing still for too long, the shopkeeper had already come out, angrily glaring at her. Terrified, especially because she did not understand, Fu ran. Horrified, Fu realized something her mother once told her. They had seen a skinny-looking boy, several years older than Fu herself, who had the same kind of mint green hair. Fu had asked her mother why the boy looked so lonely, so sad. The only thing Aoi that had been willing to tell her daughter was that Fu was to stay away from the boy because that thing had been merely a human-shaped demon. Am I a demon too? Is this some kind of sickness? I don't feel hot at all. Nor am I sweaty, like when I'm ill. She ran and ran, as fast as her little legs could carry her, until she reached familiar territory home. Oji-san. Oji-san. She yelled as her little fists bonked on the front door. She could hear voices. Male voices and at least one female too. Had her parents come home? Fu knew they had been on that short trip for their trading business, leaving her uncle, who loved Sake just a little too much to be a productive member of society, as her guardian. To little Fu it wasn't even that odd that he hadn't been there for her when she had left, been thrown out of the hospital. He usually gave her some badly cooked meals or took her to cheap restaurants and kept her fed. Otherwise, he barely looked after her. That is, unless she made too much noise in the morning. Fu was really scared of her uncle at those times. If she woke him up, he would shout at her, sometimes even throw bottles at her or try to hit her. Strangely, his movements were always very erratic when that occurred. Her mother always said that it was because of that dirty-tasting Sake stuff. Fu hated Sake. Aja-san. She repeated over and over again. The voices had silenced, and eventually she heard someone walking towards the door. The little girl didn't even notice that her senses seemed more accurate than usual. No, she was too distraught to notice the changes. "What's that fucking ruckus?" A man threw open the door, nearly knocking Fu out. He was tall, taller than her parents, and the same kind of long and light blonde hair as his elder sister Aoi. Only, this man was untended. Shabby, to say the least. He didn't spend what little money he earned on his looks, no, he spent it on Sake and more Sake. Also, the money he didn't earn would go to the same beverage. Oji-san. It's me. Fu. Something weird happened and I. "Fuck off, you're not my niece, you filthy demon," the man said with a disgust which left the little girl speechless. But, scram. I don't want to see your kind here. Tears welled up in her now orange-colored eyes. "Oji-san, why?" she begged. "Why? At lost, before I beat the crap out of you. And don't show yourself here ever again, you hear?" he shouted at the girl. Her uncle closed the door so much force that Fu thought it would be broken. What just happened? Why did my uncle say those things? Fu could hear someone crying indoor. A woman. Her mother. It sounded like her mother. But if her mother had been home, why had her uncle opened the door? Why had he treated her like that? Little did she know that her uncle had made quite a good deal by turning her over to Hyson. He'd be able to get drunk for many nights while she would be all alone and abandoned. While it was not a busy street, the scene had drawn some attention. Neighbors, people passing through, kids playing on the nearby field all stood there, glaring at the girl. Now that the door was shut, Fu felt scared. Why? Why did they give her such a cold look? Even the friendly old woman next door who had given Fu freshly baked cookies the day before she had been summoned for that strange duty. She had smiled at Fu, laughed with the little girl. Why was she staring like that now? Why? Fu couldn't see who started it. But among the little crowd, someone had started it. Picking up a pebble, throwing it at her. The girl cried out when the pebble hit her on the shoulder. Why? She sobbed. Get out of here. Murder her. Demon. Kill her. Kill the demon. That thing murdered my cousin. Death to the demons. She ran. Sticks and stones they hurt. They hurt so much. But the words of the people she thought she had known, those words had hurt her far more. Why did they do this? She kept running. It must be a misunderstanding. She had to get back to the hospital. She had to get her hair back to normal. She didn't want these orange eyes. She wanted to go home. Why? He heartbroken cry resounded as she kept running. No matter how badly she hurt, she had to keep moving. She had to go to the hospital where they would help her. They would return her to normal, right? Shivering, curled up in a small hole of an old wall, the mint-haired girl lay. Shivering because it was cold and dark, somewhere deep in the night, but also shivering because of the fear and frustration she felt. The hospital she had barely entered the building before one of the nurses had walked up to her, grabbed her by the arm, and dragged her out. The woman had stated that people like Fu didn't belong there. And no matter how the girl had begged and cried, the woman had not allowed her to go in. There is nothing that can help you now, the woman had told her. You're on your own. Scram. Why did everyone suddenly hate her? Why was she chased away? Why would people call her names or even attack her? Little Fu did not know what to think anymore. She just cried. She wanted her mommy, her daddy. She wanted to wake up from this horrible nightmare. She cried bitter tears until she felt like she had no more tears to shed. Trembling, the girl wanted to scream out, but her voice was gone. After all the crying, her throat hurt so much that, even though she opened her mouth, she could not make a sound anymore. She was too tired to even try it, too tired to keep crying. So, she fell asleep. Miserable as she felt, sleep might be a refuge. But it wasn't, it was a sleep filled with nightmares. It was a sleep darkened by the terrors of this day, her first day as a Jinchuriki. Now she was Fu the monster, Fu the demon, Fu the murderer. All the things people had called her, they all haunted her in her dreams. Until suddenly everything changed. Demei, the humongous blue-armored Kabutomushi rhinoceros beetle, looked down in surprise. Within this damp space of room which mostly resembled a giant cave, a little girl lay on the ground. The human was still in her larval stage, if he saw it right. Human physiology was so confusing at times, as they always looked the same. Only parts, like breasts or genitals, really changed over time. But otherwise, humans all looked the same to the giant seven-tailed creature. In the middle of the cave-ish area was one giant pillar. It was so big that even Chimay could not see the top of it. And he knew there would likely not be an end. Not that it mattered. Chimay had 7 tails, of which 6 resembled insect wings, while the 7th was an actual tail. They all sprouted from the same place, at the end of his abdomen, and that was where the chains were connected. Chimay couldn't fly, humans were so cruel. It made him angry. Very angry. Yet, somehow, he still pitied the little larva which had been rolled up in a ball, shivering and crying, seemingly unaware of where she had ended up. While humans were always tiny compared to the mighty Bijuu, this specimen seemed exceedingly small. Yet, the larva had the same kind of mint green hair his hosts usually had, the same color as the stems of his 6 wing-like tails. The wings themselves were orange, a color which usually repeated itself in the color of his Jinchurikis's eyes. Underneath the helmet-like skull, Chimay narrowed his eyes. They glowed with an orange light and were rather sensitive. In fact, that was why Chimay liked his helmet. Apart from his uncanny smell for pheromones, his other senses were a bit unremarkable. Well, his night vision was good. Like most beetles, Chimay had 2 big shiny eyes, which were actually compound eyes, meaning that they were made out of many smaller parts. And again, Chimay was not known for his sight. Sure, like other beetles, he could see ultraviolet light, making his sense of sight completely different from the humans he had been sealed within, but most of the time Chimay just relied on his sense of smell. It was not that Chimay had a nose, no, he used his antennae to smell things. The entire concept of a nose had always seemed weird to him. As exemplified by the sniveling child below, it just seemed so inefficient to rely on your sense of smell with such a slimy appendage. HRMPF. Larva, why are you here? Larvae like you aren't supposed to get in here on your own. To his annoyance, the child seemed to ignore him. So he bent forward, as much as those accursed chains would allow him, and extended one of his 6 legs. However, as his entire body was covered in a blue armor-like exoskeleton, Jermaine knew he had to be careful, extremely careful. Those fleshy humans were always so fragile that even a little poke often resulted in injuries. Predictably, the little girl screamed when Jermaine gave her the softest and gentlest nudge he could muster. It was typical for a human. The previous boy had reacted the same way the first time Jermaine had seen him. Crying out in fear and trying to run away, the boy had made a rather bad first impression. Jermaine considered it rather rude. He was a king among beetles, and his wings were a wonder of nature. Why were humans always so scared of him? Of course, that first response of the boy had been the least of his worries. The boy had blamed Jermaine for the way he was treated by the other humans. It was a rather poor bond, so Jermaine had tried to break free. Breaking the chains had become rather easy, as they had become rather brittle after some time had passed. But then all had gone dark, and now this little girl was here, his new host. Her orange eyes stared at him with fear and confusion, making Jermaine sigh wearily. It seemed like things would repeat themselves yet again. And the larva will run in 3, 2, 1 go. He mused. She still hasn't moved. Curious. I ask you a question, you know, Jermaine tried. Perhaps this human would not be as bad as they usually were. It sparked a bit of curiosity in the giant insect-like demon. He was not one to hold grudges, much unlike Kurama, nor wild like Jayuki, nor insane like Shukaku, nor stubborn like Son Goku. In fact, now that Jermaine thought about it, he was pretty much the only one who was even a bit tolerant of humans. Yo. The exclamation seemed to wake the girl from her stupor. Hello, she stood up and bowed hastily. Who are you? Where am I? What? Manners. From a human. In front of me? Jermaine began to laugh. What a strange little larva you are. Larva? The tiny girl didn't understand that he meant her, and she looked around. Probably afraid of the idea that war would be grubs swarming around him, Jermaine amused himself with the thought of scaring her by making it reality. Then again, she reacted differently from the previous hosts. Yes, you're a human larva, right? A childlike human, before you're a pupa and change into an adult, Jermaine snickered when he saw the girl's reaction. Apparently the idea of being a larva wasn't very appealing to her. And changing into a pupa even less. Foo. The girl sputtered. I'm not a larva. Well then, Fufu, what are you doing here? Jermaine tilted his head a little, making the horn protrusion on top of his head tap against the protrusions on his shoulders. And not Fufu, the girl protested. Had she forgotten where she was? Who she was talking to? Apparently him having said her name wrong made her forget about that sort of thing. I'm Fu. Fufu, what's the difference? Fufu sounds cuter. What? But I'm Fu. Seriously? You know, my name is like the word seal, she said with some pride. Yeah, that is kinda problematic, Jermaine said dryly. I tend to dislike seals. So why don't I just call you Fufu? I'm not Fufu, Fu huffed. Fu also means wind. That sounds more appealing. Though by wind, you don't mean a fart, right? A fart? What? I hate farts. They smell bad, the Biju grumbled. I am very sensitive, so don't you ever fart in front of me. The girl looked at him as if he was a complete idiot. Which he sorta was, even Jermaine had to admit. He never really gave things as much thought as others of his kin. Isobu could spend entire days filled with nothing but thinking and pondering. Jermaine found that rather boring. He loved to just aimlessly frolic around. Sadly, that was also why he had been caught so easily by these little fleshy humans. The lady never farts, Fu huffed. But if you don't like seal or wind, my name also means style. That's not something you can make fun of, can you? She dared the giant in front of her with a childish bravado that made Jermaine laugh out so loudly that the floor shook. The girl toppled over, splashing in the stale waters that covered the floor of the cave. You're certainly a funny larva, Fu, Jermaine chuckled. I'm Jermaine. No other human had been like this one, so why not share his true name? Ah yes. Hi, Jermaine, Fu stood up, patted her now wet bottom, as if she wanted to clean the muddy white dress she was wearing, and bowed like how her mother had taught her to politely greet strangers. If you don't mind what are you? She added shyly, knowing that her question would most likely be rude. I'm what you humans call a Biju. I was sealed inside you a few days ago, remember? A few days, is this what that gray-haired man meant by duty? Most likely, Jermaine grunted. Humans tend to dislike me for some reason, even though your kind is eager to abuse my chakra. Why? I think you have to go through your pupa stage before you're able to understand that. To be honest, I'm surprised you don't hate me already. Hate you? Why? You're strange, but I don't hate you, Fu flapped out. Her mother always scolded her for that, telling her that she needed to know restraint, to not jump to conclusions all of the time. Fortunately, those were not things Jermaine appreciated either. He preferred honesty. And it wasn't like she could lie to him, he'd smell her pheromones even before she uttered a single word of deceit. I smell. But I warn you, other humans will probably treat you badly because I'm sealed within you, Chimay admitted. If this girl was as friendly as she seemed, he considered that warning her was the least he could do. And who knew, perhaps she wouldn't blame him, unlike all the others had inevitably done. So that is why, the girl slumped down. But why, she began to cry again. Why did they treat me like that? Why didn't Oji-san want to see me again? Why didn't Aki-san show up at the door? Breaking down in tears. Now that was a new one to Chimay. None of the Jinchuriki had ever fessed up their feelings like that to him. Then again, they were usually not this tiny as a larva, so perhaps it was due to her age. The happy-go-lucky Biju was rather clueless with regard to how he had to act. Part of him wanted to cheer the girl up, but the other warned him that he shouldn't get too close. She was just a little larva now, but once she grew up she'd probably hate him like all the others. Right. But Chimay was Chimay, so the consequences could be damned. Chimay lived in the present, not the past or the future. Don't worry too much, little one, he said kindly. Sleep. Sleep, and I'll help you tomorrow. Together, we won't need anyone else. I'll make you strong enough so that no one can hurt you again. He opened his mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth and exhaled a sparkling substance. Even in the midst of her despair, little 5-year-old Fu stared at the brightly shining sparkles, and then she fell asleep. Chimay sent a little of his chakra to her, making sure she would remain warm throughout the night, and then sent her out of this inner world. Apart from lulling her to sleep with his dust, Chimay could do little more right now. The girl was young, very young. Much younger than the previous Jinchuriki who had entered this realm. It puzzled him that a child her age could do it. She must have been really desperate that she could sink away in her own mind like this. Regardless, Chimay felt a little happiness because this little girl was more promising than any of her predecessors. As long as the humans kept sealing him, Chimay wouldn't be free, he knew that. So being sealed within someone that he liked was the second best thing. He just hoped that she would still like him once she found out how everyone would abandon her. Usually, his Jinchuriki was cast away by their families and friends and treated like a monster. They were weapons, made for the sake of the village. It saddened Chimay, now that he thought about it, that this weird little Fufu would be treated like that people would look at her and see him. Disgusting humans. Now who's the puny little worm? Kurama laughed. Hey? Where am I? Ku-chan, how come you are so huugi? Naruto was flabbergasted. Where was he? How did the tiny fox suddenly get to be the size of a mountain? What were those huge prison bars? And was that a paper with the word seal written on it, up there on the lock of the prison? Weird. Don't call me that, you maggot. Little Naruto yelped when Kurama's massive claws clashed against the barrier that separated the two of them. Stumbling backwards, Naruto noticed that this fox was completely unlike the cute little fox he had seen earlier. And the power this creature radiated, it was unreal. But how did you get so huge? I'm always like this, idiot. I'm the Kyuubi, the mightiest of all the Bijuu, Kurama arrogantly introduced himself. I've been sealed inside you since the night you were born. And in return for my freedom and our mutual survival, I am supposed to make you strong. Strong? Sealed. Me? But where am I? This is inside your mind, doofus, Kurama grumbled. I dragged you here so that you would reduce your grip on me. I'm not a plushie, you know. You were freaking strangling me while you were sleeping. Tiny, dumb human. Naturally, all of this went way over Naruto's head. Literally and figuratively. He was still struggling how the cute little fox could in fact be a mean-looking, mountain-sized fox demon. Starting tomorrow, I will train you, Kurama grunted. And you better pay attention, or I'm going to gobble you up. Kurama couldn't stand seeing the clueless kid any longer, so he threw the boy out, back into the real world. The boy would have learned his lesson now and show him a little more respect. Disgusting humans.